Welcome to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us for another edition of DAX Machina. We are here tonight, me and Anthony Pitbull Canatella, and joining us is Josh from What Lurks Beneath. I'm sorry, Josh, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your last name because I will butcher it.
It's Ninocchio.
Ninocchio.
But, think like Pinocchio but with an N.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that would make sense.
Is it like Italian?
What's up?
Are you like Italian or what?
Yeah, my dad's pretty Italian. In fact, people always complain. They're like, why do you talk with your hands so much? I'm like, so growing up, my dad is so Italian. Like he's so melodramatic, always talks with his hands. In fact, That's where I kind of picked up on a lot of my, I guess, what people call storytelling abilities, just because he's so over the top. And I'm like, that's always resonated with me. And so somehow I do what I do and it works out and people dig it. So thanks, Dad.
That's not my fault. My dad was the same way, man.
Just in case someone in this channel tonight has not heard of your channel, which I think everybody should have because it's an awesome channel. Would you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your channel and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Josh, and I basically, to sum it up, I just storytelling of the supernatural and the mysterious. So I cover all things paranormal, cryptid, missing persons, anything really that falls under the umbrella of supernatural in a storytelling format. I talk about it. You know, I've talked about like the Nahanni Valley National Park, all the weird stuff going on in there. I've talked about like mythology, legends, and folklore. In fact, I just did a video recently about the Fae in like Ireland. So like just a myriad of all sorts of different topics and content. So if that's something you guys are into, then you should definitely check that out.
Well, I'm definitely into it. I like your channel a lot.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Question: what really got you into this whole cryptid, creepy, paranormal, alien, sci-fi universe?
Well, funny you mentioned that. So growing up, my mom has always kind of been a big proponent of that. She was when I was young, she's very into Bigfoot, and but I don't think she had sat me down and had me watch shows. I think it just naturally kind of gravitated. I just kind of gravitated towards that naturally. Like I remember watching. I can't remember the name of the show, but it was think of like a Paranormal Witness kind of show. I mean, that wasn't the exact show, but in the early 2000s, I remember watching that. I've always just kind of had an interest in it. And then I remember back in 2013, I was interning at this computer place. And at the time I didn't have a car at the time, so I had to take the bus back and forth. And somehow, some way, I just kind of got the idea. I really wanted to read up on Bigfoot encounters. I just thought that was fascinating. So I remember spending hours on BFRO and just getting sucked into all these eyewitness encounter stories. And that would later evolve into really getting into Dogman and Dogman encounter stories. And it wasn't until I'd say about 4 or 5 years later, we moved out here in this kind of more rural part of the state. And I had a job about 45 minutes away and I worked evenings. So on the way home, for whatever reason, I gravitated towards narrators on YouTube. And there's one guy in particular, Swamp Dweller. I kind of just started listening to his stuff, and I really got off on that for, I had a 45-minute drive home, and so I just listened to that all the way, and I really dug it. And I thought to myself, I could do this. And I already had a background in audio engineering to an extent, just kind of as a hobbyist, so I had the equipment, I had the knowledge, I knew how to do all that stuff, and I'm like, I could do this. But I kind of kicked around the idea for, I'd say 2 or 3 months, so it wasn't until December. I remember in the exact spot of the road I was at where I came up with the name What Lurks Beneath. I'm like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's just try it. And I did it. And my first few videos were, I can't go back and listen to them because I'm like, oh gosh, how did I ever get listeners? I have no idea. And now in comparison, I feel much more polished, but I look back and it kind of just, took a life on its own, and I've just been, polishing and changing it ever since. So that's kind of the whole thing in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned last time you and I talked that you have a book deal in the works.
So I actually just signed with Beyond the Fray about 2 weeks ago. And
Congratulations.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, the manuscript has to be in here in probably about a couple weeks. So hopefully everything can go smoothly for a fall release. It's basically The first book is going to be called The Big Book of Monsters, and it is 120,000 words worth of firsthand accounts. Cryptids,
Nice.
Bigfoot, Dogman, sea creatures, crawlers, Mothmen, flying humanoids. I just have a library of content. You're going to see some old stories in there. There's going to be a lot of new stories in there. It's just a lot to unpack. And I think I told you about it. Somebody got pissed because they're like, a compendium of Reddit posts isn't a book. But I'm like, look, these are very cleaned up. They're polished up. I'm going to have anecdotes in there. I'm going to have a nice forward in there. It's going to be a nice. I just don't want people to think they're just getting literally a text file of stories. It's going to be very well put together. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing that come out.
Yeah, you're going to get
I'm too.
You're going to get that kind of reaction from haters and everything like that.
It is what it is. I mean, I get the nature of that, but I get it. I do. So it's like, I just try to do something that I'd want. I mean, I'd buy it. If somebody else was doing it, I'd be all over that, So.
Well, I'm definitely going to add it to my library.
I'll send you guys copies.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I would love to have it. I would love to have an autographed copy. That would be awesome.
Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely.
So we should be looking for that around this fall.
We don't have a release date yet, but I'm going to assume it's probably going to be September, October-ish, I would imagine, just, in terms of like how they want to market it and just typical book campaigns. That's kind of what I'm figuring, September, October. I think that would make the most sense to me. Yeah. And like, it's going to be a fat book. So that's what I want, like that's those trilogy books, those like fantasy books you buy in the store. It's just like, you could sink your teeth into. I love that. So yeah, it's a big undertaking.
Well, congratulations, man. That is a huge first step, getting a book published. As one author to another, I'm very proud of you, brother. Congratulations.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
But I'm telling you, the first time you hold a copy of that book in your hand, I compare it the first time I held one of mine to when I held my son's. I mean, it was like, oh my God, it was suddenly real.
Yeah, it is. It is, especially when you have a publisher who's like, hey, like, let us do all the marketing, everything, and the cover for you. And it's like, I told them initially, I was like, I could self-publish. I have an audience, but I'm like, I just don't have the time.
Right. It's okay. We know.
No worries, man. No worries.
Yeah.
We got.
All right. Don't worry about it. Good.
Sorry, guys. I have kids in the
back. You are perfectly fine, brother.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Anthony and I have both been there.
Yeah, trust me. Yeah, somebody got hurt or somebody got hurt.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
No problem.
Yeah,
well, I'm very excited for that book to come out. And any of the naysayers out there that say, well, it's just a book of accounts, dude, that's still a major thing. You're compiling a book. You've put the time and effort into cleaning it up. You're adding your own flares to it. I mean, Josh is a fantastic storyteller. I love. Oh, you're back.
Right.
Yes, we're back.
I was just bragging on
you, guys.
Oh, no problem, man. I totally get it. Been there myself many times.
Trust me.
In fact, I'm going to bring everybody, including you guys, outside where it is beautiful out here.
Awesome.
It's been a nice, windy, cool day.
You're where? Yeah. Where are you located at? Let's do it.
Well, I am in the. Yeah, I'm in the southern portion of Washington. I'm outside of a little town called Goldendale, kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
My brother doesn't live too far from you. Then he lives in Walla Walla.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Walla Walla's not too far.
No.
He's a retired cop from Walla Walla.
Oh, great! There we go. Yeah, we'll just add it to the ambience bar.
Now you got
I got the two big boys here with me too, so don't worry about it, man. No, it's all right. You might hear my pit bull bark maybe once or twice. Don't worry about it.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen.
And everybody, you know what? Everybody loves it. Don't worry about it, man.
Absolutely,
no, I know. Man. It's all good. It's all good.
Studio, if we were in the studio, no. We're, just, like we said, we just do it live. We do, I'm in my house, DA's in his, you're at your, I mean, it's like, come on,
Yeah, well, I'm just very fortunate that so far it's been very peaceful out here, because I know, so before we kind of lived closer to like to Portland, and with everything that's gone on in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Fortunately, like we had moved out here because just with rent and stuff being a little more affordable, and just things being a little bit more accessible. Right. I kind of prefer more of a rural area anyway. It just makes things a little more easier.
That's yeah. Well, You get away from the hustle and bustle of
yeah,
craziness.
and just I enjoy peace and quiet. As there's a dog barking.
No, believe me, man. It's all good. Trust me. It's all good.
I know.
Hey,
I know.
it's what happens when you go live.
Yeah.
You can always edit that stuff out if you pre-record, but when you're live, it's just there.
Oh, you know, and it's funny too because I've had people say in episodes like, "How do you manage to read a script all the way?" I'm like, "There's edits, trust me." I'm like, "There's no way I can do a 30-minute script without a mistake. Like it's impossible."
For every clear paragraph you read, they don't realize there's 5. Oh crap! I got to edit this out.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, it's just you got to have clever editing. I mean, like even if you watch someone like Mr. Ball, and if you like watch his content, he has a lot of jump cuts. I don't think people like really like catch on to that. They're just like, wow, how do you do that?
the
like,
miracles of modern editing.
And that's one of the reasons why like I don't like do episodes like live in the sense because I'm like there'd be so many botches and things where I'm like, you know, I gotta like check a pronunciation on like a strange town. You know, I'm like, that's weird. You know, happens. Or like you like double guess yourself. You know, and you're like, oh wait, is that really where that's at, or is that really like what? You know, so it's just one of those funny things.
Yeah. Hey, one of the things I wanted to mention is I really like the style you use when you narrate these stories. It's dramatic without being melodramatic. If you know what I'm saying, because there are a few channels out there where like it's like that guy from Ghost Adventures. Just then, at that exact moment, it says that in every episode, and then the bald guy runs over the cameraman.
Well, not even that. You know when they do the robotic voice. You ever listen to the robotic voices when they?
I don't like those either.
You're like,
no. At first I thought you guys were talking about the Chills guy who's like in this episode. I'm like, I cannot handle that guy. I just
there's another channel where they do that overly melodramatic voice, and I'm like, not listening.
Yeah. Everything has to be like. So then we went over here. I'm like, that's not. Nobody wants.
It's like the two voices that I like. Like your style of telling stories with your voice is awesome, and then
I appreciate that.
Then you have DA's good friend Naoma. She tells stories, and it's like it draws you in like yours. And then you have what's his name, Cam from Dixie Cryptid. Even when he tells stories, it draws you in. You know, it's like the voice just brings you into the story like yours.
Exactly.
Does. And that's why, you know, when I started listening to you, and DA's like, hey, man, can you get a hold of him? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'll try. I don't know if he's going to answer me. And I was like, well, he answered me. Okay. You know, and your stories are like right there, man. It just sucks you into the story. Totally.
I appreciate that. You know, honestly, I just tell it like as if we're sitting right here, you know, I kind of have, you know, when people say, well, do you have a voice? I kind of do. It's like more serious, but I don't got to like change or like alter what I say. It's more just like cadences and how I like, I don't want to say enunciate, but I guess how I just would tell a story. But I try to make it like, you know, if you're sitting right here, it's more like, explaining it, you know, I think that's.
You've got a very around the campfire kind of style, and I like it.
Yeah. That's what people have said. I'm like, I guess so. You know, everyone's like, you know, you're so good at what you do. That's your guys' opinion. Like, I appreciate that. Like and there's some people, you know, that they really like buy into their own stuff. They're like, but to me, I'm just like, look, it's like a job. Like I show up to work, and you know, people just enjoy what I do for work, and so like it's just cool, you know. If you guys really, at least in my opinion, I think Donovan Dredd, he's a newer channel. I really dig his voice. In fact, he's actually a friend of mine, and he started creating that stuff, and I'm like, that was the first time he ever did his own voice, and I'm like, wow, I really dig your content. And there's another guy by the name of Oberon's Occult, also great voice too. I can like listen to him for hours, and so although, you know, doing what I do full time, I don't go off and like listen to a lot of like narrations and podcasts because I'm like, I live it, you know. So
I don't listen to as many as I used to because now that I'm a full-time writer, most of my time is spent focused on the books.
Right.
But I still do listen to the occasional podcast. You're one of those ones that I will make time to listen to. In fact, your telling of the Palmyra, Maine incident, probably the best on the internet.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
Oh, I was just reading the comments real quick. Wow, you guys have a
You know,
lot. I'm just gonna scroll
your
through.
voice, like DA does the books, like we talked about before, and he does a lot of them are on Audible. Your voice for telling one of his books would be crazy, crazy.
Yeah, if you
good.
ever decide you want to do audiobooks, let me know. I've got a ton of books.
Crazy good. And you get paid for it.
I thought about doing it, like, also doing it for my own books as well, but it's just a matter of, like, is the time there? And, people say, well, you just gotta make the time. I think I'd be open to that in the future, like doing stuff, but it's just a matter of, like, what is the time? Because I don't know how much you guys know about it, but I've heard a lot of people talk about doing audiobooks, and it's a very drawn out, like, it's just a lot, and of course narrating episodes. Yeah.
There's more work into an audiobook than people realize. I mean, there's a lot of work goes into doing, say, a 20, 30-minute story that you narrate, but this is a story that's essentially going to take 9 to 10 hours.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Depending on the size of the book.
Right. And then, like, then you have different takes and stuff, like there's just editing it, that I've listened to audiobooks and I'm like, ooh, they didn't, there's a bad edit in that spot. Like, that sounds terrible. I'm like, ugh. But, I think it's definitely would be something that'd be really cool to do in the future for books and stuff, because I like the next book I wanted to do was going to be like one on national parks, and and no, not David Paulides, guys, not missing people. I want to do like the supernatural side,
the horror stories from not just the missing people, but like people that spotted the rake or things like that.
Well, kind of like where my book is more just like firsthand encounters. I would want to do one that kind of just goes off the lore, the legends of just for example, like if you guys watch the Nahanni Valley video, or for those who've seen that, that's like that, where I talk about the lore and the legend, and like they're not necessarily firsthand accounts, but it's just like you're going into the history and deep diving, and it's not about missing persons. And God forbid I do a missing I'd get so much flack from the Paulides community. Yeah. So I'm not about that. So.
There's a connection to the Nahanni Valley. There's a valley down in southern Arizona in the Superstition Mountains where bodies have been found with missing heads as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and so I think that's the thing too, is like, yeah, we have the missing person, the national park thing, but nobody's talking about the supernaturals, like the lore, the mythology, and so Paulides, he has his niche. But I think I would definitely want to cover the other side, where it's not so much true crime, because everything seems to be true crime, and I'm like, where's all the monsters? Where's all the supernatural? Like, that's what I want to hear. Right. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you can't verify if we're and I'm like,
to verify stories.
I'm like, I know, but I'm like, you can't just enjoy it. Like, it's called entertainment. Right. Like, So I know. I mean, teach that some people, they get really rifled up about that, and so I get it. I guess people, they want crime scene photos, they want corroborated details that this sheriff was here, and like they want real. Yeah, I'm like, you can only get so real with this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, unless you were there. Yeah. I think you guys had asked me too. Somebody was like, well, how do you vet these stories? You can't unless you were there. You just got to take it with a grain of salt. It's like. It is what it is, man.
It's the same thing with Bigfoot sightings. I mean, or Dogman sightings, or any kind of sighting. You've got to take it at face value, or you basically have to question everything.
Right. So right.
Every Bigfoot sighting is unsubstantiated unless they got a selfie with Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I know people, they get all up in arms about it, but I'm like, look, that's one of the reasons why on my show, sometimes I hate to take a neutral approach, because I have part of my audience who really wants me to go the I believe route, and the other part is like, no, you need to be logical and reasonable because we want to respect you, and be like, this is nonsense. But I'm like, you know what? I'd rather you, the viewer, leave up to you. I've given you the information. Right. What do you think? Is it a hoax, or did this genuinely happen? And I think anybody can listen to somebody's opinion, but I'm like, that's more mysterious. It's like listening to your favorite album and having no idea what the lyrics mean and making up your own interpretation of the art. Like, that's an experience, and it's like, as a form of like artistry, like that's something I enjoy, like doing, is having them do the guesswork and just, and also because I can't say for a fact, like, oh, this is true. In fact, the only story I have on my channel that I would like stand as like, well, this is definitely true, it actually happened, was my dad's like possession encounter.
Right.
So hey, you got to go back and play, okay? So that's really the only story that I would stand that like growing up, I heard that all the time. The details never changed. That's pretty much, I would say, concrete. I guess in concrete, like the most craziest possession story that I've ever experienced.
Your dad's not going to lie to you and tell you a fib when he's sitting down with you and talking. And, like me, I was a non-believer in DA. He'll tell you, I didn't believe in none of this crazy stuff. So until I had my encounter, that was the whole thing that changed me. So,
hold on one second, guys.
No problem at all. Yeah, Northwoods, I'm right there with you. I remember when my boys were that little too. Seems like a very short time ago, but my boys are all grown men now.
Oh yeah, it goes by really quick.
They get more expensive as they get older. Trust me. Way.
This is why we'll have to have a secondary podcast where I can have block like a 2-hour session.
You're not going to get one big comment. You're not going to get one big comment on here about the kids. If you look, everybody's saying they're cute. Don't worry about it, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. Come on, sweetheart. Let's come on inside. No, I know it's not a big deal, but come on, baby. Why don't you go play, okay? Go play with brother. I know you want to play with me, but why don't you go play with brother right now? Daddy's on an important phone call. See ya. Bye. There we go. Got that handled.
that was adorable, dude.
Here, take a pint of ice cream in the room. See you later. Just go.
I was like, go watch TV. Here's some dinner. Go play.
So how do you get your stories? Do you research themselves? Do you get stories sent to you?
All the above. So, do you guys know who Josh Cutchin is?
The name sounds familiar.
I've never heard of him.
So he's another, I'm going to say big paranormal researcher, but he definitely is like somewhat known in the field. He was like on Ancient Aliens, and I give him crap for it all the time because he hates the still from it all the time. And so he has a few books. He's a great researcher. And so I actually have him, he does some research and writes some scripts for me. I've written and wrote some scripts for me. I have people who submit stories. I kind of have like a gamut of just different, content that I can pick and pull from to make what I do. And so, I think that kind of stemmed from, like a while back at the beginning of this year where I'm like, I just felt like just reading cryptid encounters. Like, it just felt so one dimensional. I'm like, I want to do more than this. Like I'm not getting out of it what I want to. And so I'm like, I want to have like a show where it's like, think of like Twilight Zone meets Unsolved Mysteries. And somehow I've got there, like somehow it's happened to that. And I think that just happened by broadening topics and covering more things of just, expanding, going a little more 3D. And I think that's really helped. But I think, does that answer your question? I mean, because that's really what it comes down to is, I'll find like a topic. I'll be like, oh, like Australia. I'm like, oh, the Min Min Lights. So I'll spend time like researching and like writing stuff. And I have people I pay to do research and writing for me. And, it's kind of just all over the place. Like there's really no one specific person. In fact, I think his name is Nunnally Barton. God forbid, I hope I'm saying
Barton
it right.
Nunnally?
Barton, there we go. Yeah, Barton. Yeah,
I know Bart. Good guy.
Yeah, he's like a huge fan of mine, and I was like, I'm kind of like flattered because like you're kind of a big name too. And so he sent me did he send me a couple? Maybe I bought a couple of his books. I think I bought a couple of his books, and so
I've got a couple of his books too.
Yeah, I was like, hey, can I use some of these for research? He's like, yeah, go for it. And so he had one in his Kentucky book about the burial mounds, and I kind of like used some of the burial mounds information there in fact, the Kentucky script I just did probably like 2 weeks ago. But that's really bad. So I might kind of start doing that more, kind of collaborating with like authors in that sense where I can kind of share information and just, we'll kind of see where that goes. But there's so many topics to cover. Like I've looked at like, a wanted for content list, and it's just ever, not to mention like park ranger stories, deep wood stories, and all the it goes on and on. And so I'm like,
I've done a few short stories for Cameron Buckner over at Dixie Cryptid. I'd be more than happy to do a couple for you if you wanted to sometime.
Yeah, it'd be great. And plus, I still have a bunch of encounters I got for you to send to you that you can hang out and see. Because I'm like I said, man, like I have a little library of stuff. There's so many stories that people have never heard on like all my channels combined. So it just it's almost overwhelming to like try and sift through them and be like, wow, like, oh, this is a good one. This is a good one. Like, oh, and of course, like there's stories in there that are the person who wrote it is I don't know how or why they wrote it that way, but it's like really hard to understand, or it's like really bad grammatically. And so you kind of have to like go and clean it up, but and try and like decipher what's being said. So it's just a matter of like, okay, like how do I decide what to use and what not to use, and just trying to like pick and pull from the best. And so that's kind of the way how I approach that.
Well, I think you've really kind of hit lightning in a bottle, because it really works well, and I like you've got a great style. You're telling some great stories, and I'm really excited about this compendium of encounters that you're publishing, because I mean, having those, it's one thing to be able to read them on the internet, but having a copy you can pull off your library shelf and thumb through. Yeah. I hope you do more of those.
I actually like the angry person, a compendium of Reddit posts. I think I'm going to use that for the actual like sales description as well, just to rifle his feathers, whoever that person is. Yeah, and that's the thing though too. I think that kind of thing is great, and it's something I've always wanted to do. It's something in that vein, especially since a lot of, like I said, those stories they've never been shared on the channel. Some have, but some haven't. Some are stories that haven't been heard in a very long time. So it'll be really great to kind of just share that with the world, especially because there's some like weird stuff in there, man. There's some weird stories. Like, so I don't know, Josh wrote some for me a while back, specifically like on the Ukraine thing, and just how like around the end of the USSR, like they had a bunch of like weird alien abduction stories. I mean, just weird stuff, like aliens coming in, like, pulling out like semen from people and like, using it to like create like new hybrid aliens, and like just weird stuff, man. It's just like, wow. So yeah, I'm hoping to get those stories out.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be really cool.
Yeah. Is there any like stories in particular like that you guys enjoy hearing, like that you like request that you want to hear? Or?
I like the Dogman stories, and I might be a little biased on that, but again, like I said, the one you did about the Dogman encounter in Palmyra, Maine, freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So that was actually on a Paranormal Witness episode, the whole Palmyra, Maine, because like when I did that, people were always like, Mr. Ballin already did this story. I'm like, right, but it was on a Paranormal Witness episode. So that story in and of itself is crazy. What's funny is like in the video, they don't like refer to them as like dogmen or like werewolves. They're just like these canine creatures. But if you like watch that episode and you look at the behavior patterns of like the creatures in that episode, it really lines up with some of the stuff going on that like people experience in Maine. And in fact, that same area in which it happened, I've heard other things from like people who live in the Maine area that like, yeah, dude, like you don't want to go in the woods in that area. It's like super sketchy, or it's like I've had some crazy stuff happen. It's not really a place you want to go to. It's just, it could be kind of deadly, with some of the stuff that's going on there. So
I'm more into the, I guess, Bigfoot and Dogman, but more into the military with the Bigfoot and Dogman hunting them.
Oh,
I'm trying to get some former military guys on. I mean, not show their face, but talk about their experiences, especially special operation guys. And it's been like pulling teeth to get these guys vetted to tell their story.
That can be hard to do too, because some of them don't want to come forward,
Right.
Yeah. Or you get some that are just like completely crazy,
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, I shouldn't have had you on the air. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, we I'm like, a couple of times. Trust me, we're not gonna lie. So but if
you let him go,
even if I could get, a lot of these guys write in. I know they write into you, former, military or special forces guys, and I hear a lot of these stories. Even if they don't show their faces, just to get them on here and tell their story, and get it out there. I mean, you got. Prior military guys, they're not going to make all this crap up. No. Like the story of Kandahar, okay? You get two conflicting stories with that. You get one that was they were contractors, and then you get another one that they were special forces. So, but then the pilot came forward that transported the body, And he was on camera. And he says, listen, man, I transferred this body in a C-130. I know what happened. You know, I mean, so why would they lie if they're not, you know, it's like, come on.
Right.
Who's going to make this up?
Right. Right. And and the thing is too, like some of those, you know, I think it's easier if you're military or ex-military, because you can kind of decipher, you know, just by the lingo they used, or like what they say, or how they, you know, like, well, this person isn't military, you know, like, you know, they would know we only use this caliber of bullet.
DA and Doc can actually pick up on that and be like, nah, this guy's full of shit.
Yeah.
No.
You know, I've heard people say stuff, and like, in fact, I have a couple friends of mine who are like, you know, ex-military or military, and I'll try and like run stuff by them, and you know, they're usually the ones that are like, yeah, like that, like this doesn't fly, like, or like this isn't, we didn't use this caliber of bullet in this year, you know, or like, you know, we you know, so it's really easy to kind of weed that stuff out. With others, you know, it can be hard to do as well, you know. What's wrong? Oh, she's upset now.
We had a comment in here. One guy put in, he goes, the gigantic handlebar is all bullshit. He puts FYI.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I've heard convincing cases on both sides. I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough personally to like, oh, well, this is definitely, I don't believe this. You know,
well,
I don't know.
Considering the Kandahar giant descriptions match very closely to the descriptions of the giants of Lovelock Cave, I think that lends credence to the story. Now there are people on both sides that say, "Oh, it was BS," or "It was." You know, we know it was for a fact. Yeah, we may never know 100% for sure, but I would say it's certainly intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I did some research on. There was another counter story that was a bunch of Navy SEALs. A SEAL team that went into North Carolina. To take out like maybe 5 or 6 of these, you know, Bigfoot. And you know,
they were like aggressive, weren't they?
Oh yeah, and there was 2 civilians with them that were tracking them, and you know, I did the research on that, and I even looked for the town in North Carolina, and at least an article from the sheriff's department, because the sheriff was involved in it. I didn't find anything.
Wow.
I didn't find nothing, you know. So and this guy was a former Navy SEAL telling the story, and he was on his deathbed, and they had him on the air, and he told the story, you know. And some of the lingo that he was saying didn't match up, even in the story, you know, their tactics and everything. I was like, I don't buy it. I'm not buying it, you know. You know, you're not 19 years old and you're a Navy SEAL. I'm sorry.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. There's a vetting process to go through, and anybody that's made a special operation, especially with Navy SEALs, it takes up to 2 years to get you tried it. So you're not, it's impossible. Impossible.
I think, and that's the part of it too, that's why it's like, you know, there's a lot of, I don't want to say backlash, but there's people that'll say, you know, why should you give these people a platform, you know, blah, blah, blah. Then other people say like, well, you know, that's not fair that you know, you wouldn't let people talk and say story. So you're constantly like in the middle with this, but that's why I like stress this a lot, that I'm like, you know, let people say their stories. Like, as long as there's not like an agenda behind it, that they're not like, hey, here's my story, but this is a vessel to like promote something else that's crazier. Generally, like I said, like I think, as long as you could let them say the story and then just like, okay, like, listen, you know, it's not a matter of fact, unless like I'm telling you my own personal experience. It's not a matter of fact, like just take it at entertainment value or face value for entertainment. Right. But, you know, like even if all the details line up, you know, and even if it's an area like where there's a lot of corroborated stories and there's like documentation, it's, you know, things can still be falsified. And so it's like, to me, just the mystery alone, you know, because people ask me all the time, like, what do you believe? Do you believe Bigfoot? Do you believe Dogman? I'm like, I want to. You know, I think the possibility is definitely there. I've never seen one. I'm like Mulder from X-Files, you know what I mean? Like, I want to believe. I really do. Well, I know so much about him, you know?
I was the same way, man, and until I had my experience hunting, you know, and I was with somebody else here in Florida, and that's what made me believe it, because I was like, when you see it, your mind doesn't, your brain's telling you it's not real. But then you're looking at something that's flesh and blood right there, And
Right.
you know it's real. You know it's not fake. In the middle of hunting season, you're not walking around in a costume out there where I was.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to be stupid if you did, because there's a bunch of rednecks running around out there. But
Yeah.
you know, I was a non-believer. And when I asked everybody, this is the weird thing. When I asked everybody that was at the hunt camp, it was like nonchalant. They were like, "Oh yeah, it's out there." I'm like, "What?" You know, like it didn't like, "Oh yeah, we got deer running around." Yeah, it's like nothing to them. You know.
You know what I find? Oh, go ahead. There's a lag, so it's like right when you stop before you start. Like I'll go, and then like you know, it lags and stuff. No, it's okay. The only thing I was gonna say was, this definitely puts me on more side of the believer side, because you know, the more I do like these episodes, the more I have like Josh and stuff research for me. Like the more I learn more about like the Native American culture and like the indigenous stuff, and they all have so many stories. And people say, well, yeah, well, that's just legend. Yeah, but we're talking about every tribe.
Right.
They're not just like legends, and like they're actual legitimate stories. Like chiefs have it. Like in fact, back when I worked at the little retail shop that I worked at, I would have people from the Yakima and the Spring Reserves tribe, and they would come in and I'd ask them about it sometimes, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, like yeah, Bigfoot attacked our camper, or like this happened," and there was never like, "Oh, I don't believe that." It was like, "Oh yeah, no, he's there."
Yeah,
you know, I was like,
we got a good buddy, Fred from Alaska, that he's Native American, and he just started his YouTube channel, and he had to get permission from the elders to even go out and videotape and record these things and tell his stories and get accounts, and he's had his own account, you know, and like he talked to me and DA privately, and he told us some, which I'm not going to disclose. Some crazy stuff that would just blow your mind. I mean, you know, and he's Native American himself. You know?
"Oh yeah."
And just like here in Florida, we got the Miccosukee and Seminole. They call them swamp apes.
Oh, yep. Yep. Good old swamp apes.
You know, and then they also call them swamp Indians. Okay.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah. So you have this, I mean, like the ones up in Alaska, like he said, are more aggressive than the ones like where I am or where DA is. And they're bigger, more aggressive. And that's what Fred was telling us. He's like, "Bro, I've had numerous encounters, you know, at my fishing camp, and his uncles and grandfather and tribal members telling him stories, and you know, you got to get permission to tell these stories, because these tribe members do not want their names told. One, no, they don't want a bunch of people coming up there and doing research, running around the woods trying to shoot one.
Right.
So he's trying to keep it nonchalant, and his stuff, I believe, is true. And I like I said to DA and everybody else, this guy, if he gets the evidence, like he said, you don't have to go looking for them when you go up there where he is. They come right out to you.
Oh yeah.
So he gets the evidence. I think it's going to probably be one of the best, maybe videos or pictures that are that it's going to be out on the internet besides everybody else's. It's just a matter of time that he has permission now to do it.
I'd be careful though. I've heard people getting taken out for less, man. Like I've thought about that. People are like, well, how come there's no, you know, big evidence of Bigfoot? I'm like, there probably is, but I'm like, you won't see it because it might be confiscated. I know that people are like, well, that's a conspiracy. Well, it's just a thought. Okay, it's just a thought. I don't know that for sure. But I
think after everything that's happened over the last couple of years, I think we can move conspiracy theory firmly into current events.
Yeah.
Did I tell you guys the ongoing shit?
Think about it.
What's that?
True. Think about if you know, when the government does release it, if they ever do.
Be a panic.
Okay, look at the damage it will do to the logging industry, camping industry, park industry.
Yeah.
Losing billions.
Yeah. Billions of dollars. Billions. The forest industry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Billions. People would be terrified. Nobody would go camping. I mean, it would hurt a lot of things.
And then you'd probably get a lot of people hurt going out trying to hunt them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to take your kids out in the woods? If they come out and say, oh, well, by the way, there's a bipedal primate running around the Northwest, you're not going to take the little ones out. Oh, let's go camping this weekend. Yeah, it's not, you're not going to, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. By the way, they can be extremely aggressive and kill. Yeah, that's also like I don't know. You guys know much about the face eaters or the Gugway.
Yeah,
well, that's
I've done a couple books with Gugway.
Those are in his books. Those are really good.
Oh man, it's a wild thing, man. It's like, gosh. And of course, my wife is like, let's go up to Mount Adams and camp. I'm like, knowing what I do, I'm like, gosh. So I'm like, okay, sounds great. Yeah. And in my head, I'm thinking, like, this is a mistake.
can we camp in an armored personnel carrier?
Yeah.
I don't know. So for everyone out there, Mount Adams is a mountain here in Washington State, and it is a hotbed for the strange. And I mean, there's been missing people. There's been UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings. It's like, Washington's version of Mount Shasta. Shasta. Yeah, it's just like, there's all sorts of like, supposed like occult activity. I mean, just everything and anything you can think of around that mountain. I've heard of people talk about portals and just.
Well, if there's any kind of Bigfoot. Sorry, go ahead.
What?
Sorry.
Oh, I was saying earlier, somebody said it's portholes, not portals. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. But if there's any kind of Bigfoot activity at all in that area, I'd be very careful about taking small children because that seems to draw them in.
Yeah. You look at all the things, and it's like kids wearing bright clothes, especially like if they have special needs. It's like, oh gosh, you blink and they're gone.
He said it too, Fred. He says, a lot of the, back in the day, even now, they don't talk about it. There's children taken from the villages and women.
Yep.
Women and children being taken. And, they don't even talk about it now.
And look how many people go missing on reservations that don't even get reported. Yeah. Or if they do get reported, they don't really do anything about it. It's kind of pathetic that our own FBI doesn't hardly ever investigate missing persons from reservations.
I'm not sure why that is, and I've also had a lot of stories from the Navajo, the Navajo. I wouldn't say the culture, but the reservation has a lot of stuff going on as well. I mean, I know a lot of the reses do, but a friend of ours in town. I don't know how to word this without. I don't want to give away any identities or whatever. I guess I'll just say it as my wife's friend's husband. He is full-blooded Navajo, and I got a chance to sit down and talk with him just briefly about stuff. And he's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, when you're down there, you don't go out and smoke at night. If you do, you put the butt out immediately. There's just certain things you don't. And there's certain etiquette that you follow. And he's like, I 100% believe. He's like, there is no, it doesn't exist. That seems to be like a what do you call it? A typical European American thing that we're like, that doesn't exist. But I'm like, really? You talk to any of the natives, they all got stories. They all believe. Why is that?
Oh yeah.
Well, what's that about? I don't know, man. It's just, there's so many things that don't sync together in our modern day society. When it comes to the supernatural, where I'm like, why? I get people who comment on my thing, supernatural doesn't exist. I'm like, you're on the wrong channel, bro.
If you don't believe in any of that, why are you even here?
Yeah, I'm just like, Jesus. Cool story, bro.
We have Jesus from Breaking Bad. I don't know if you ever listened to his podcast.
Yeah, you guys told me about that.
Okay, he does a lot. He's part Navajo, so he does a lot of research on their res, and he's got some crazy pictures.
Oh yeah,
I mean crazy pictures that I think they're 100% real.
I can't get that one, honey. It's stuck in the wood. So yeah, you guys are talking about the guy from Breaking Bad, right? The native guy who's on your show.
Jesus Payan.
Yeah,
he's been on the show a couple of times and really good guy. I'm going to be working with him on some projects here in the very near future.
Yeah, he's got some really good clear photos of Sasquatch. I mean,
that's what you guys are telling me, and it's like, God, but of course, with his Hollywood thing, he could never come out and talk about it. He'd be ridiculed, and it's like,
he doesn't really care. He's got his own channel. He's got a channel called Breaking Bigfoot.
Yeah, got his own channel right now, man.
No.
So I mean.
But it makes me sad that a lot of people are afraid to come because of how cruel.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the first thing that comes to mind is of course, I just forgot. I do so many scripts and so many episodes, I can never like remember half the stuff I do. But the Kentucky alien incident, it was like back in like 1960s.
Oh yeah,
it's really famous.
Yeah,
he did a show on it.
The Hopkinsville Goblins.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, I'm drawing a blank on the name. I was like, I just recorded it like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, the ridicule that family faced afterwards from like not only like the police but the community. I'm like, why? Like, why are people so like malicious? I don't get it. I can understand like, well, I don't believe that, but to humiliate and ridicule, like I just like, man, it makes me frustrated and like just. It makes me sad because I'm like, these people, like, they can't help what they experienced, and like they're going through trauma, and it's almost the equivalent of like having someone who's like a victim of like abuse or something like tragic, and then basically being completely discredited and like, yeah, just don't talk about it, hide it up. I'm like, because you personally don't believe it. It's just, it's nonsense, I'm like, that really sucks, but it is the way it is,
I tell people all the time, even if it's a type of story that you don't particularly agree with, there's always some kernel of knowledge to learn from all the accounts. I mean, we're basically establishing baseline behavior.
I mean, look at the Dogman story. What was that one DA that they attacked the farmhouse?
Yeah, that was the Palmyra incident,
right? And they got I mean, they got oh, that's bullshit and that's not true and this and that. And, but you got 3 generations telling the same story that were there. I mean, how come on.
Well, people are like, well, they just do it for publicity. I'm like, why would you come out with that kind of story for? Like, do you realize like the only publicity you're going to get is very negative? I'm like, so that is such a ludicrous sentiment. I can't even with that.
I totally agree.
I'm like, you think you're going to get a movie deal from that? Come on.
Right. Yeah, I kept my interest in cryptids pretty much on the down low for the whole time I was in law enforcement. But now that I'm retired, I don't care who knows. I mean, they can call me a liar, they can call me crazy, whatever they want, but I believe they're out there.
Yeah, and like you did, there's officers out there who are like, I believe it, and I've been on calls where I have had to deal with it. I can't talk about it, at least not publicly, or I work on my reputation as an officer, and it's like,
I've collected several stories from other officers who are like, "Hey, you can't use my name."
Right.
Look at all the forest officers, all the Florida wildlife or the wildlife officers that had encounters, or
the border patrol agents,
right? The forestry department. I mean, you got guys coming out of the woodwork right now that are retired that are like, you know what? I really don't care. I'm going to tell my story, and they know these things are out there. They know these things. They're not looking for fame or fortune.
And some of the things you hear is like, my God, like, it's not just like, oh yeah, I went over to Bill's house and he said, you're going over there, you're seeing like horses ripped in half. I mean, just and like, what kind of predator has that kind of power to rip a horse in half or to rip the head off a horse? Like, how much muscle mass and like tissue there, just stuff like that. And it's like, oh, well, that was a black bear. That was a mountain lion.
Let me tell you something. Not in Florida. There's not a black bear in the world in Florida that can rip a horse's head off. I can tell you that now. Okay. And that's what made me, like, after I had my sighting, I started putting everything together. We would find dogs with their necks broken.
Yeah.
Hunting dogs. And I was like, okay, that collar got caught on a fence or something, or, now that I had my sighting, I'm like, all right, this makes sense now. Everything started coming to light. So, I mean, you're not going to find a black bear in Florida that's going to rip a horse's head off.
No.
I'm sorry.
Well, I mentioned that it's actually specifically. So my uncle Dominic, the one who was possessed, in the 70s, so him and my dad, they lived in Florida, and they lived right around. It was like north of Miami. I don't remember exactly where, like Johnson Beach and things like that. And so I know they moved around a bunch, but back in the 70s, it was just thick Everglades. Like it's so metropolized now, and
Tammy,
I don't know exactly.
It was very, very, very rural area back in the 70s.
Yeah. My uncle, he did some hiking and stuff. He came across a field where he had found a horse with its head ripped off. And that's always stuck to me. And then I guess not too far after, not too long, so somewhere within that vicinity, he found a den there wasn't anything in it, but it had a stink.
Yeah.
And it's like everything. Like to me, that's a skunk ape, man. Like even my dad's like, what has the power to rip the head off a horse? Like what? You can't say, oh, that was a cougar. That is not how cougars kill. They do not it's just they don't tear like that. It's just But people try they try to rationalize, because I think the idea of those existing is terrifying. That they can't comprehend that. It's I can't think of the word. I have dad brain. I can't think of the word. It has to cognitive dissonance. That's what I'm thinking of. Cognitive dissonance. That they can't accept that that's a real thing.
It'd be a complete paradigm shift for them.
Right.
Yeah, it really would. And I think it's that way for a lot of people. And I've gotten the comment on my channel, like, how did I get on the stupid side of YouTube? I kind of just laughed. I'm like, I get it. People, this is the topics I cover, you guys cover, like that we all talk. Like it's for most people, it is so far out there that they just can't. That they're in the matrix. They're in their everyday regular life. Like this isn't even in their radar. So like they get to this like, what where's your tinfoil hat at, bro? I'm like, I get it.
Once they have their own experience, like me, it changes your whole outlook.
Yeah,
I was the same way. I was the same way. I'd be like, yeah, you're full of shit. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I've been out in the swamp hunting. I don't know how many years. I've never seen anything. And that one day, that's all it took for me. And that's what changed me, and I'll be honest, I never went back there. That was my last time going out on a swamp buggy, going with my buddy and going out there, because there's something out there bigger than you that you haven't seen that can hide that good. And when I looked at it, and you got to mind you, I looked at it through a scope. It was only 150, 200 yards out. I had a very powerful scope on my rifle. I looked right at it. So when I seen it, I was like, when I first seen it with my eyes, I was like, somebody's playing a joke. And then I put the scope on it. I was like, no.
Yeah.
It looked too Native American. Like I keep saying this, it looked like an Aborigine from Australia.
Yeah.
And that's what it looked like. And the muscle mass was ridiculous on this thing.
Yeah.
And that's what
they look very Neanderthal, or is it Neanderthal? However they say it. Yeah, that very, very primitive features. But it's like you're looking at a man. They usually have dark eyes, but it's like you're looking at a human being. Yeah, it's like holy crap.
I could have took this thing out with no problem. The round that I was using, it would have dropped it right there. And when you hear stories about these hunters, and they're like, well, why didn't you take the shot? Because it looks so human. It didn't compute to me in my head, to shoot it, because your mind doesn't really, it's not gathering all the information. It's like, wait a minute, they don't exist. Why am I seeing this? And then you start thinking about the repercussions. If I shoot this thing and this guy, what if it is a guy in a good costume? Or what if it is, I kill it, what are the repercussions I'm going to get from the government on top of it?
Right. Yeah. It's, and to know, like, there's certain areas that have been, like, I don't want to say guarded off, but like just you can't get into, and just, I'm like barely scraping the surface here, but like if you start like looking into like restricted areas, government restricted areas, military, it's like there's so much stuff going on. Like it is, it's not even a rabbit hole.
Look how many millions of acres of national parks are inaccessible.
Yeah, yeah. Like backcountry and stuff. I mean,
Florida has a law. You can't hunt them. They have their own law in Florida. You cannot kill a skunk ape.
And people say, well, that's a hypothetical law. Like they just did that. It's like a meme law. I'm like, it's a legitimate law. Yeah.
It's in the pamphlet. It's in the FWC pamphlet for the Swanee area. It says it right next to hogs. It says only take hogs during certain season, and swamp apes are like prohibited to kill. I'm like, I looked it up. I found it. I was like, why would they put this in a pamphlet? For hunting laws. And that's the weird thing. It's so small. If you go everybody reads the fine print. It is small. You would really have to look at it to catch it. So that's the weird thing.
It's it's funny you mentioned the swamps, because like some of the more like reptilian ones that I've done, like people have found these burrows dug down into the swamp ground, which to me, I'm like, it's swamp and it's like mucky. How do you have a tunnel? How do you have a sustainable tunnel that doesn't collapse? That's, again, like, take it with a grain of salt, but I've got a lot of them. People talk about the alligator man, or like these dinosaur looking reptiloids, I think is what they're called. Just creepy stuff from the swamp. I know, I think it was, I can't remember the story. It was, I think, in Arizona or around the Navajo area, that they call them, they're like these reptilian shapeshifter beings. Which should be like, well, yeah, aren't reptiles like shapeshifters anyway? She's on a police tricycle yelling at me. They're these like reptilian like shapeshifter beings that apparently like burrow underground. Just all sorts of like crazy stories. And it's like, like, I can't even like wrap my brain around them. But for whatever reason, like when I started like telling these stories, for like, oh, like there's no cryptid guy on YouTube, like, you know, he's my go-to. And so I would just get all sorts of like crazy stuff. And of course, you know, I got some obvious like creepypasta. Like one guy sent me one about two dogmen like making love and stuff like that. So I'm like, all right, like I get it. But people will submit anything. But there's just so many that I'm like, how are all these people like lying? Like, there's just no way. There's just so many stories, and to share so many similarities and like details of just, you know, like the physical appearance or how they act or like the things they would do. And it's just like, man, it's kind of mind-boggling, really.
You know, even where I hunted, man, I mean, you had other, you know, you don't think you would see a crocodile in West Palm Beach out in the swamp, but they have actually caught them, you know. So you got a saltwater croc living in the swamp out there. I mean, who ever thought of that? You know, I mean, then you got ocelots running around. I mean, look at the iguana and python problem they're having in South Florida now. So anything's going to adapt. You know, if you let it, it will. Mother Nature always figures a way out. Always. So, you know, that's what I believe in. I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Well, especially, I think a big area for me that's really, because there's not so much information on it, is like water cryptids, and not just like, oh, you mean like Nessie and like some of the lake monsters like Ogopogo. I mean, like, no, I'm talking like mer creatures and like, you know, aquatic humanoid creatures. Like, I've gotten some stories about that kind of stuff that'll scare the pants off you. One particular was a guy who was swimming with his family. I think it was around Mount Hood, I believe it was. It's been a couple years, but it stuck with me. And he was out swimming with his brother or family member, and one of these things came up and like grabbed hold of his leg, and of course he was like trying to kick it off or whatever, and he could barely see it underneath the surface, and like it terrified him. And he said it looked like, you know, like something from a horror, like it freaked him out. And so of course, you know, I can't remember all the details, but he made it back to shore, and he had like these deep gashes on his leg and like this weird blue ooze around his wounds that they couldn't identify, like just weird stuff. It's like, what, you know, it's like, how do you even? And of course, I bet he probably never went swimming again.
Probably not.
But it's like, and I've heard other stories that are very similar like that. In fact, like Lon Strickler on Phantoms and Monsters, you start like looking through his stuff, he's got a bunch of weird stuff on his site too. Of just all these encounters. Like you start to look at all these details, and there's so much, you know, similarities between all these cases, from not just like flying humanoids, but creatures in the water and creatures on land. And it's just like, you know, even like the Thunderbird, you know, a guy, I guess I can call him a friend. I haven't talked to him in a little while. Jim, he had this crazy Thunderbird experience when he was young. I did an episode on it a while back. He was like young, and this thing tried to basically like grab him through the bushes. It was, you know, like terrifying. And he described how big it was and that he could see the blood on its beak. I mean, just like, gosh, man, like that's terrifying. You know, like that there's just stuff going on that we can't even begin to comprehend. And I think that's part of the reason why I wanted to do what I do, because I'm like, if I can get people to be more aware of this kind of stuff, or at least, you know, open up the idea of it and kind of get people's stories heard, and, you know, it at least kind of gets people more aware and like, wow, there's actually more to this. Because I think you see how big like the supernatural paranormal genre is. On like, you look at the show Supernatural, which is like, it's obviously a fake show, but I mean, like how much people are interested in that kind of thing anyway. And I'm like, there's a deficit of content in this genre that people like want, you know, more than just like a cryptid sighting, or like, you know, that they want. And I'm going to go to Mr. Balding real quick. Like when he first started off, he was doing paranormal content, and then from what I've heard, he's lost. I shouldn't say he's lost because he has a lot of subs, but a lot of people I've complained that he doesn't. He's all about true crime now, and it's like, a lot of people are like, I'm not really into like what other people did. Other people like, I want to hear, the stuff that they don't tell you about, and that's so it's like, yeah, that they're besides me, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but like I don't know a lot of other people that kind of do the like in the genre that I do. Like I know there's narrators and stuff, and I wish there were more. I really do, because I enjoy that kind of content. And I would love for just like the narrators who cover the stuff we do, or like you guys, to be much bigger on YouTube, so that audience can get out there. Because I don't think people realize, it's like once you have somebody in a niche who does this kind of content, who gets big or bigger, that just adds more to the community, and like will actually bring more popularity to the other creators as well. So it's a genre I'd like to see get more popular. And it just makes me sad it's not as popular.
I agree. And I do think there's a huge niche for this kind of content. Obviously channels like yours, like Dixie Cryptid, some of the other storyteller channels, they have huge followings, and there's a reason for that. It's because people crave this kind of content. And it's not because everybody believes, it's because I think it's like the uncanny valley theory. I think there's a reason we all fear something that looks almost like us in the dark, because deep down we all still kind of believe there's monsters out there in the world. I mean,
oh yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things where it's like, you really don't know till we get out there. You're always kind of like, every time I step out in the woods, I'm always like, is this going to be, am I going to have an encounter? I've had some experiences, but never like with a cryptid. I've had a supernatural experience. Of course, my dad has. I'm pretty sure I saw a UFO, but like nothing to the extent of where I've come across a humanoid or seen something like watching me out in the woods. So I don't know if people want me to elaborate on either of those two. They're kind of on the shorter side, but it's enough for me to be like, okay, there's clearly something going on,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in the in the UFO community, what was 15, 20 years ago was tinfoil hat territory. The government's going, oh yeah, we've got cockpit footage, and the aliens are out there. And little by little, they're kind of releasing more and more information about UFOs. Suddenly the conspiracy theory people aren't that crazy anymore, because this is, it's proven to be real. Governments are admitting to have known about them for years. And I think this is slowly happening with cryptids. I mean, little by little, you're starting to see more signage. You're starting to hear more people go, yeah, we know about them. But I don't think it's going to be a big revelation. I think it'll be a trickle over years before when they just go, there you go. We've been telling you a little bit all over time.
Or I think the most famous theory is that, they're going to introduce aliens, and they're going to be like, okay, we're the ones that created you. We're your saviors. I think that's called the alien savior theory or something like that. I don't remember what it's called, but to me that's very plausible too, or possible too.
Yeah, I agree.
I know it. Yeah, I think he is stuck. Since tell me that he thinks his dog's stuck. Let's go check him out, buddy. But I mean, with all this stuff going on, I think really, I think people should still, I don't think people should like be paralyzed to the point to where they don't go out in the woods and like they don't hunt anymore. And you still got to like live your life. You can't be terrified, but just I think if people were aware, and people were at least conscientious of like, like, hey, like this is in the woods, I got to respect my space. And, especially when you come across some signs in the woods where it's like, okay, like, I got to be, I definitely maybe shouldn't come into this territory, seeing like tree branches broken up 8 feet off, or like you see the things where you see like the branches twisted together, crazy stuff like that. It's like, yeah, there's probably just certain things that I certain areas. My father-in-law, so he's hunted elk up in Mount Adams quite a few times, or he looks for like sheddings and stuff. He's got he said that there's some weird stuff going on around that mountain. And there's one part that he calls the Voodoo Camp, because you have to, it's like off the road, off the beaten path. I'll look for him in a second. Okay. It's off the beaten path, and you kind of go down in there a little ways, and he says like, there's like an energy, like you could feel like you're being watched. Like it feels like, ugh. And he calls it the Voodoo Camp, and he's like, it's weird. And there's one time where he was back there, and he's like, something followed me along the ridge line. He was talking about like kind of seeing it, whatever. And he's like, I'm the only one out here. And he's like, that there was just weird stuff. And so it's like, wow. Another along where I'm in at the Columbia Gorge, there's a small little community called Home Valley, and he was there with a friend of his, and they were probably like standing on the top of a hill, and like down as you descend down the hill, it's like all like thick brush, and he said he heard something like just, it was like a very annoyed like get out of here, and my dad or my father-in-law looks at it funny. He's like, that was a squatch. Like we got it. Like we got to get out of here. And it's like, he's like, oh, I know they're real. Like you don't got to tell me. So it's just like, gosh, this kind of stuff is really happening.
Yeah. I think the best takeaway we could get from that, if the government were to go, here it is learning what to watch for and what to avoid. I mean, we've got warning signs that tell us what to do and how to avoid encounters with grizzly bears. I don't think it would be any different, really.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I know like people will ask about the whole bone thing, and they don't really have. A lot of people don't find carcasses and bones of like bears or cougars. So it's like,
rare to find a bear skeleton.
Yeah, and it's like, plus I've heard many stories from like indigenous that like Bigfoot will actually bury their dead. Just man, like we're not talking about a rabbit hole here. We're talking about like a rabbit lair, because as I always like to describe, it's like you go down a tunnel and you get to like a chamber, right? And in that chamber there's 6 different rabbit holes. You go down that road, there's another chamber, and it's like each one is so long. You could honestly spend like probably 100 hours going over all this stuff. You know what I mean? It's just,
oh yeah.
So like, I feel bad because like a lot of these podcasts, like you're really only allotted so much time to like cover just like little like snippets of like each thing. And honestly, I hope like when people listen to this stuff, it kind of like piques their interest and they go off like, wow, I want to go research that. Google is your friend. Well, I would say Google's your friend, but I mean, you can kind of find a lot of stuff. Maybe not so much anymore that a lot of stuff is censored, but you can find a lot of. I just digging around on YouTube. You can find a lot of stuff, a lot of stories, a lot of encounter stuff that'll just blow your mind. You're like, my gosh, that's kind of how I started. I shouldn't say started, but that's kind of how I started, like doing, like just looking into stories and research, and like you just find stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's a wealth of information out there. The problem is most people will just refuse to believe, even when presented with evidence. They're like, they go, okay, well, if they're out there, where are the eyewitnesses? Boom. Here's thousands of eyewitnesses. Well, okay, well, where's the footprints? Here's lots of footprints. Okay, well, where's the DNA? Boom. Here's hair and DNA. Okay, well, where's the body?
Yeah.
I mean, we can send people to prison for life on eyewitness testimony. Why is it suddenly not usable when it's Bigfoot?
Right. And right, exactly. It's one of those things where it's like, I think there's more going on than meets the eye.
Oh, there's definitely more going on. And I believe the government's known about them for a long time.
Yeah. I honestly, it's like, will we ever even have the answers? Probably not.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know if they will actually ever.
Yeah, probably.
I'm not exactly sure if we'll ever get that information.
Yeah, I think they are slowly giving us a little bit of information. Like if you look at the Ohio Department of Natural Resources releasing that multi-part series on what to do in a Bigfoot encounter. And when I first heard about that, I thought it was going to be a joke, but they're legit, straight up, honest videos. So I think we're going to see more and more of that starting to come back around. But I don't think we're ever going to get the smoking gun. The government just goes, here they are. I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. And honestly, I don't know with our current government society that we'll ever truly find out for real, because I think if we do, it's going to be at least really watered down information. You know what I mean? Like
very much so.
If you're talking about a release of that kind of information, you're talking about a complete distrust in the government,
Yeah.
And,
well, a lot of us are there.
I mean, you're talking about, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we lied to you. Just kidding. It exists.
Yeah. Just kidding.
It's actually really quite dangerous. She shouldn't go in the woods at all.
Don't poke the Sasquatch. It'll tear your arm off and beat you over the head with it.
Yeah. It's 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 not safe. You should just stay inside.
Yeah, probably shouldn't go messing around.
No. It's
And,
oh, go ahead.
Anytime you get one of the stories where it's an attack story where somebody is killed, there's so much disinformation immediately comes out. You know, if it was just somebody telling a Bigfoot story where somebody, Bigfoot showed up and killed their dog, and nobody reacted other than people that are interested in the accounts, it would just be a case of, oh, it's just another Bigfoot story. But then you get the attack stories when there's suddenly so much disinformation trying to prove them wrong, or had an eyewitness that said it didn't happen. To me, that lends a huge amount of credibility to these stories, because otherwise they wouldn't go out of their way to disprove them.
Oh,
Most
yeah.
people just go, eh.
You think that there's so much disinformation being like pushed on some of these, I wouldn't say cryptid sightings, but I should just say cases in general, where I'm like, why is there so much like being put into this? There's just so many strange things, man. Like, honestly, it would take, I feel like, a team of people to really go down and like start looking at all these different, sub niches of niches of this entire genre to like really kind of maybe start piecing things together. Like, for example, like the disinformation from like cryptid sightings, and the similarities of like the continuity of details between cases and like locations, and just there's just so much, and that's just that I realize as I do what I do, it's like when I think I kind of got something figured out, I'm like, okay, like there's like 20 more cases, there's like 20 more things that I'm like, oh wow, this changes everything. We're like, oh wow, I didn't know that existed, or I didn't, right. I didn't know this was a thing, and it's like, my gosh. So like I was saying earlier, like it's an endless stream of like it just keeps going and going and going, and so I think that's really kind of one of the most beautiful parts about like what we do and what we write about when we talk about. And I think that fills a huge hole in a lot of people, because a lot of people, they want to know about this stuff. Totally agree. A lot of people, they have questions, that nobody seems to have answers for them, or at least any ideas that much. And you can't really look to mainstream media for answers for this kind of stuff, because they won't even bat an eye at it. And at least, and even for the skeptics, they're like, oh, this is interesting, like, oh wow. And after a while, they start listening, they're like, huh, like there's a lot of things that sound similar, like, huh, maybe I'm kind of like skeptical, leaning towards like, oh, I could be open to it. And I think most people should approach it with an open mind. And I definitely don't think that everybody should believe every story there ever is. But
I totally agree.
Yeah, be skeptical, but like, okay, like this is possible. What happened? Like, okay, things add up. Yeah, like this could definitely be a thing. And but it is really sad when you have a lot of people who are like, nope, doesn't exist. Nope, this channel's bullshit. I've gotten that a few times, but I'm like, you can't please everybody. It is what it is. I realize no matter what you do in life, no matter how good you are, there's just going to be people that just don't like you. It is what it is, man.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you're going to get those naysayers. And I think that's one of the reasons I like your channel is you don't go into this big spiel, like big dramatic spiel. This story is the 100% true. You don't do any of that. You just tell the story and let everybody make up their mind. That's why I like the missing 411 cases. Paulides never says this is what did it. He just presents the story and lets you figure it out for yourself. Form your own opinions.
Right. Yeah. And here's the information I need. Or excuse me, here's the information you need to know to make a conclusion, and there you go. Like
right.
That's why, especially like with the missing person stuff. Not all of that is exactly like under the realm of supernatural, but some of these strange disappearances, it's like.
Well, then you get the cases where tracking dogs refuse to track. I've worked with tracking dogs. Those dogs live to track. When they refuse to track something, there's something wrong.
Strange, man. So strange. Yeah, there's. Like you were even saying earlier, like finding dead dogs. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many of you guys know, but that's actually like a pretty common thing. In fact, there's a lot of Deepwood stories that I haven't done, or like national park stories, that just because that's kind of a sensitive topic for people. Like, there's one story I did a while back, and it kind of talked about the death of animals, and people were like there was a lot of disliking with that. And I'm like, I get it. Like, people don't want to hear that stuff. So. But dead livestock, dead dogs, dead. I'm like, it's apparently like with cryptids, it's a huge thing, and not just like it took my chickens, but it like mutilated everything.
Yeah.
And very.
One story I got from a rancher down in Oklahoma. He said he heard his dog going crazy after something one night, and then he heard something go wham against the side of the house. Well, he grabbed his shotgun, his flashlight, and went out there, and it had slammed the dog against the side of the house. He said every bone in the dog's body was broken.
Yeah,
that takes hands, and that takes a lot of force.
But remember, it's a bear.
Yeah, it was a bear. Because bears have opposable thumbs.
That's when you got to be like, are you fucking stupid? Like, this is right in front of you. Like, how could you not? But that's like a case that I'm reading where a guy, he had helped on a search and rescue mission, and they found the man with his head torn off, and they found his head resting on a stump. And the team came in, and he's like, look, they're like, oh, well, it's a bear. And he's like, guys, he's like, this clearly isn't a bear. But the guy looked at him right in the eye, and with a pen in his hand, he's like, it's a bear. And he wrote it down. Yeah. It's like, oh, I get it. Yeah. It's like, they know, but they know.
You can't officially put that.
Yeah. So it's like, I get it. It's rough, man. It's a rough thing to be out there doing this field work. It's funny because people will say, they're like, oh, you're a paranormal researcher. Mm-hmm. I really wouldn't say that. I mean, I don't know what you'd call me, to be honest. I guess I'm just I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm like, to me, because I think like if you're a paranormal, like you're going out on the field, you're doing tests, you're like writing books, and I mean, I guess I kind of fit that mold. But I'm like, I'm not really going out in the field and doing that kind of stuff. I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess it's for people to decide. It was suicide. He was frustrated.
Yeah, I love that comment. Hi, Naoma. That's hilarious.
Yeah, there's some. Honestly, guys, we're gonna have to do a round 2 of this show. That there's just too many crazy things to cover.
Yeah.
What I'd love to do. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know you've got a lot on your plate, and if you needing to go, that is perfectly fine. Yeah, I get it, and we're definitely gonna do a part 2 of this.
Yeah. What I'd like to do next time is be able to sit down and actually I'd like to like pull out some ideas and stuff from like my previous content, like that we can kind of go over. Cause I'm like, I have some stories back from like when I was narrating like with reptilians and like witches and just all kinds of stuff that I'm like, gosh, we need to do like a 3-hour like pot where we just sit down and just shoot it. I'm going to get me a coffee. We're just going to chit chat for 3 hours and entertain everyone. Like I would love that. And we just get into, this is to everybody listen, this is like a prequel to that episode that's going to be coming up. So let's do that.
Definitely. I'm going to text you. Well, I'm going to send you by Facebook Messenger. I'm going to send you my personal cell number.
That sounds great, buddy.
Whenever you want to, just shoot me a text so I've got your number. And
okay.
You want to plan that episode. I am down like 4 flat tires.
And everybody listening, like it's going to happen. We're going to do it. We're going to be talking about the book. We're going to be talking about DA's book. We're going to be talking about all sorts of everything from Bigfoot, Dogman. Like I want to give adequate time to talk about each subject. And there's some stories that I want to talk about that I haven't got time. And of course, without my lovely spawns of Satan, getting in the conversation. but really, I'm sitting down at like my, so people I can actually see the what lurks beneath space and it's quiet. We can just hang out. So that's what I'm thinking. We should definitely do that. With that said, I am going to sign off. I hope it's been a lovely time with all you wonderful people, and I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I will catch you all very soon.
And I will go ahead and post the link to your channel once again in the chat. For anybody who wants to check out Josh's channel, it is What Lurks Beneath. It is absolutely awesome, and there is the link for everybody to make sure they go like, subscribe, and share.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure. DA will be in touch, and stay tuned, everybody, for the next amazing podcast between me and him. Take care, guys.
Have a good night, man. Thank you for being on.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much.
Well, that was awesome. I love Josh. I mean, I totally get it. I remember when my boys were that little, it was very difficult to have adult conversations until the boys were a little older. But yeah, Tombstone says long time sub to Josh. I've been listening to him for quite a while too. We're definitely going to have that other show. I will get with Josh anytime. I gave him my phone number so he can text me and we can start planning that show. So hopefully we'll have that here in the very near future. Ordinarily we would go about 2 hours, but we may be having to wrap this up. Anthony's not feeling well. That's That's why we lost him. You know, well, JT from Horror Chronicles, you're if you're not busy, man, I'll throw you a link and you can jump on and we'll talk about cryptids. Let me know and I'll send you the link. I do want to talk about a little bit here going on. The new book is out, the 5th installment of the Apex Predator series, Apex Predator Dark Moon. It is out. It's doing well on Amazon, getting a lot of reviews, which is fantastic. Remember, those reviews do help. Amazon doesn't even really start promoting the book until it hits 100 reviews, but it has done pretty well on Amazon so far, and I'm hoping that trend continues. The current project book that I'm working on is the first book of a new series called Man's Marauders. It's a continuation of my sci-fi universe, and it's coming along pretty nicely. I've also got the continuation of Apex 5, for those of you who have read it. That's in the wings, where what happens to Grey Eagle and the others on the other side of, well, I don't want to give anything away, but what happens at the end of Apex 5. Dark Moon, the next phase. Yeah, something like that. All right, man, I'll send you the link. Give me just a second. Let me grab that link and I'll send that over to you on your Facebook Messenger. All right, I just sent the link over to JT from Horror Chronicles. Hey, John. Hey, John, how's it going? Anthony okay? Check on him for me. He said he wasn't feeling well. Frank says, yeah, I saw the front print the next morning, 16 inches long. That's a big print, man. Meg Mills, I want to know when I'm going back to LBL. Well, the conference that we're going to be having it's next month. Let me bring up the picture of it. For those of you who haven't checked it out, this is the first annual Dogman Cryptid Conference. It's being hosted by Ken Gerhardt and Josh Turner from over at Paranormal Roundtable. This is a list of everybody that's going to be there. Some great folks are going to be there. People I'm really excited to hang out with and talk with. Some really cool people. Bettina Moss, who was just on the show the other night, she is awesome. Jody Cook, as you guys know, the founder of the North American Dogman Project. And we've also got Tim Coonbo Baker, who was a NASA scientist who's now heavily into Bigfoot. Barton Nunnally, who's a super awesome guy. We were going to have Barton on the show, but he had some computer issues. But just going to be some great content from the folks that are going to be there. We're really looking forward to this conference. It's going to be April 13th. Not August 13th, not April. Not one of those A words. August 13th in Paris, Tennessee. I'm one of the featured speakers. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that. I'm also going to be a pro guest at Archon in St. Louis, Missouri, the last weekend of September into October. It's like September 30th through August 2nd, October 2nd or something like that. So if you guys are anywhere near the St. Louis area and want to make the drive, I will be one of the professional guests at Archon, which is a really great convention. They say St. Louis, but it's just across the river in I can't remember the name of the little town, but it's just right across the river from St. Louis. You can look up Archon St. Louis, and it'll take you to all the information. I'm going to be doing a couple of panels with Jonathan Mayberry, which is going to be a hoot and a half. Hey, thanks, Shane. Said I just ordered Dark Moon, finished Wolf Moon last night, and just got started on Blood Moon. Thanks. Great series. Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Skeptical Zombie says, thumbs up and sub. Great live stream. Thank you so much. You are awesome. Nailman, no, it's not Alton. I'll just have to look it up real fast. Let me give me just a second to pull it up. It is actually in Collinsville, Illinois, which is just across the river from St. Louis. If you go to archonstl.org, I will put that in there. There's the link to it. You guys can check that out. Well, there's JT.
Hey,
up,
what's
brother?
going on? What's
How you
up,
doing,
brother?
How's
I'm
that new
good,
board
man. I'm
working
good.
for you?
Well, I don't know. How do I sound?
You sound good.
Am I loud as hell?
Well,
Do I need
you're
to turn down?
well within comfortable zones.
Huh? All right,
So
here,
well
I'll
within
turn down a
comfortable
little
zones.
bit.
How you doing? How you doing, man?
I'm fantastic, man. How are you, brother?
I'm good.
Good,
So-
good.
Thought see if you wanted to jump on and we can talk a little cryptids. I know
Yeah,
there's
hell
been
yeah,
some-
hell yeah.
know
I
there's
was
been some
getting
cryptid
into
action
the
in your area.
conversation there.
Well, I appreciate it, brother. Appreciate the support.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah. You do a hell of a show, man.
Thanks, man.
Hell
Well,
of a show.
Now you guys do a pretty hellaciously good show too.
Yeah, we're a bunch of goofballs.
It's like an awesome mix of heavy metal and horror.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we do, man. That's what we do.
So you guys have had some pretty wild sightings in your area. In fact, just a few years back, there was an Ozarks howler sighting just outside of where you're at.
Yeah, if you guys don't know about the Ozark Howler, the Ozark Howler's been around for years. I don't really have any information up here, but I mean, we're talking all the way back to Daniel Boone actually caught one of these things. And they are a cryptid. They're you could call them a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, but they're more rodent-like, but big. And we actually had a sighting. It's kind of funny. I usually have my co-host Ryan here with me, and he lives about 3 or 4 miles from me. We actually had a sighting in between our houses. So probably within about 1.5 miles of where I'm recording now. Now, it's funny. We were going to reach out to these people and talk to them about it, but they seemed a little sketchy. So, you know, but they did end up making it on, what was that? Monsters and Mayhem or something like that. One of those Discovery shows. Pretty cool story, though. They did a whole thing about the Ozark Howler. And,
and there was actually another sighting not long before that down near Branson, Missouri.
Yes. They actually claim that this thing, we don't know if it's just one or if there's multiples or whatever, but
there'd have to be a breeding population, otherwise the one's immortal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. But they've been actually sighted all over the Ozarks, all the way from, up, at the lake area. Mm-hmm. All the way down into Arkansas and stuff. Yeah. And these things have just been roaming around. I don't know what the hell they're doing. They're killing dogs or,
Well, the Ozarks has got such weird folklore anyway. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of creepy crap and not just like Bigfoot type stories, but there's the Howler. There's the vampire beast of the Ozarks that was sighted down in Douglas County. Just all kinds of weird folklore around this area.
There is a lot of strangeness around here, that's for sure. And it's not just the people.
Yeah, it's not just the people.
And you and I know because we've been here a long time.
Yeah. Well, there's been Dogman sightings here in Missouri too. There's one just in the city, the outskirts of St. Louis. Several up near Hannibal.
Right. Well, and if you remember, Ryan told us a really good story about a sighting he had when he was younger.
Yes. I wish Ryan was here to retell that story. But
because it's a really cool story.
It is a really cool story. I don't want to tell it because I'm sure I'm going to leave out some details. But we need to get you guys back on and just do a cryptid show.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Do an Ozarks folklore show.
You know me. I want to talk about Chupacabra.
Yeah, or the rare version that you can only find at Taco Bell, the Chupacabra.
The Chalupa, yeah. I ate one of those a few weeks ago. Give me the Chalupa shits.
Yeah. Well, that's just Taco Bell in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Robert Sharp says that's because there's a cave system in Hannibal. This is Missouri. There's caves everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. They're everywhere. Dude, hold on. I got to kill my light. Hold on.
Okay. Well, hopefully Anthony's feeling better. Naomi says another recipe straight out of Arkansas. Yeah, chicken fried chupacabra. or maybe even chicken fried Ozarks howler. You never know.
Sounds like a new delicacy or something.
There you go. There we go. We got a Chalupa Cabra fan already.
Yeah. That'll be on the menu next week.
That's right.
And DA is responsible for that.
Yeah, I'll take the blame or the credit, whichever you want to call it.
Yeah. Hopefully you make some funds off of that.
Trademark the Chalupa
Cabra. Yes, sir. But yeah, man, cryptids all over the place. It's kind of cool because I'm kind of excited and I'm kind of disappointed at the same time. You know, I told you my wife is getting ready to take a big trip. She's going over to Scotland and Ireland. Yeah. And one of the places they're stopping, we were talking about it today, she's going with a tour group. They are actually stopping at Loch Ness. And I'm like, oh my God, you're freaking killing me.
She gets pictures.
I was like, you got to get pictures. I was trying to get her. I was like, go get like I don't know, a stuffed animal or something and just toss it out there in the lake and take a picture of it.
Put a little pool floaty on it so it floats out across the water.
Yeah. Plastic flamingo floaty.
There you go.
Yeah. Look, it's it's Nessie.
Mark Napier says in Kentucky, we'll eat about any critter if you can make gravy.
Yeah.
Or if you go down to Louisiana, they'll make a gumbo out of practically anything.
Yeah, no kidding.
You better not be aliens landing in Louisiana because they're going to wind up as alien jambalaya.
Yeah. What was I? You know, you guys earlier, and I'm not trying to get away from the cryptid thing here at all, but earlier, you know, we were talking about tribes and stuff, or you guys were talking about tribes and how different tribes do different. They do the same things, but they won't even be remotely close to each other. Yeah. So last night, it's crazy. I got in. I was watching this show. God, I don't even remember the name of it. It was like, UFOs Untold or something like that. Anyway, they were having a big long discussion about the Pueblos and how the Pueblos had these huge you can't really say they were cities, they were like little towns. And there were like 4 different sites that they had built these places in, and all of their buildings like refer to the heavens and the stars and all that stuff. But what was crazy about that, and we're going to have a big long discussion about this sometime because I think you'll eat this up. All 4 of these settlements were in perfect alignment with the meridian that runs through the country.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and it was like 3 sites in the United States and 1 site in Mexico, but they were all perfectly lined up, and none of these tribes had anything to do with each other.
Was one of them Mesa Verde?
Yes.
I've been to Mesa Verde. That is a really interesting place. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it was.
And the strange thing is that place has a weird energy all its own, especially
and that's what they were talking about. Is all of these places are like that, and. Dude, I want to get into something like that and just tear that up, dude.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm down.
Because I've been fascinated with that kind of stuff for years, you know.
I think another one was Acoma, the sky city that's abandoned. Yeah, that's built on top of a mesa. How they built that on top of a mesa with no way up is beyond me.
Right. And it was crazy because they were talking about they had road systems and stuff. Well, they didn't even have work animals or you know, we're talking 5,000 years ago. They didn't even have carts and stuff like that. You know, I mean, we're talking, they had nothing. Why did they need a road system? You know, and all of these roads were perfectly straight and in perfect alignment. You know, and they're like, it's hard to fathom how they would have pulled that off.
Hey, we got a new one, Chalupa Copters.
Chalupa Copters?
It's Taco Bell's own Air Force.
But let's get back into the cryptids here.
Heck yeah, absolutely. Like one of the things I like the most about like when you research cryptids in the Ozarks area is how things seem to like like up by Ha Ha Tonka, they've got Devil's Kitchen.
Yes.
Devil's Den State Park. We've got all these places with these weird names, and it makes you wonder why they're named that. It's
Hell,
like
just down the road, we've got a place named Devil's Elbow.
mm-hmm. The first guy that went there went, you know what? This place is beautiful. Let's call it Devil's Elbow.
Yeah, no kidding. You know. Yeah.
So there's got to be a reason some of these places, you know, like up near Warrensburg, Missouri, they have a place called Monkey Mountain.
Yeah, how did they come up with that?
Right. Why would they name something Monkey Mountain here in the Ozarks?
Right. There weren't any monkeys. Well, unless they're referring to, some Sasquatch sightings, because there's a lot of thought out there that these things are, what is it? It's like the great silverback gorilla or something like that. They're like ancestors to that or whatever.
Yeah, I think that that the Monkey Mountain, because I know my mother and my father lived up in Warrensburg before I was born, and Dad said that there used to be stories all the time of people that were going out there to park or whatever, getting chased off by what they referred to as the Monkey Man.
Yeah. Man, this thing is crazy here. I need to make a change. Hold on. For some reason, I'm picking you up through my board.
That's weird.
All right. Am I still getting you there?
Can you hear me? You hear me all right?
Nope. I have lost you.
Uh-oh.
All right. Well. All right. Never mind.
Got me now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, we're good.
I was hoping to get you coming through the board through my headphones, but because I'm picking up a little residual from you out of my speaker.
It might be the fact that I've, now that I've got that board I got from you working, my sound's better.
Yeah, yeah. Are you using that tonight?
Yep, we're on it right now.
Nice. Yeah, you do sound good, man.
It certainly improved. Well,
it took me a while to get that thing squared away. But
this is what I was using before I got that from
right. Oh
you.
yeah, and those are good little units. I've got one similar to that I was using with Pro Tools to run my guitar through.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they did a good job for what it was, but it was time to upgrade to something new.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Eventually, if things go well, I would like to eventually get like a Rhodescaster like you've got.
Right.
But that'll be down the road.
Yeah. And I got cool little sound effects though. Or I did.
That's awesome. I heard that one.
Oh, okay, right on.
That was freaking cool. Hear it. It came through fine over here.
Yeah. Oh, it probably went through my headphones actually. But anyway, we're just playing now.
Heck yeah. Hang on just a second. I'm gonna.
Well, we got whose hat are we throwing in the ring?
I'm sending the link to Naoma Finn. Does the Naoma Finn storyteller? Oops, I sent her the wrong link. Sorry, Naoma. I just sent her the link to my webpage.
Oh, that'll work out for her.
Yeah, like here, jump on the webpage. So, what are some of the stories that come from your area?
Wait. What are we talking about werewolves here? Oh.
We got a guy here. Meanwhile,
I got you.
He's one of our regulars.
Nice.
One of our irregular regulars.
I saw earlier some Horror Chronicles was getting some love in here.
I threw your link in and told everybody to go like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, make sure you check us out. We talk about all kinds of stuff. We get into cryptids, paranormal. We talk a lot about horror movies and stuff. Ryan talks about himself a lot.
Right.
Yeah. I wish he was here. It's funny. I got this new damn board, and I can't even get him to come over and do a recording. That's all right. He's busy.
Naomi says, "Give me a minute. Some guy just sent me a link to his webpage." That's hilarious.
Naomi, he didn't mean it.
Yeah.
It's just a joke.
Well, at least it wasn't Ryan's OnlyFans page.
Thanks there, too.
Anyway, there are quite a few Bigfoot stories between you and Fort Leonard Wood too.
Yeah, the fort is a hot spot actually. And it's funny when you're hearing stories come from there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's military.
Right. I talked to a few guys that were stationed on Leonard Wood. There was one guy had a sighting out what we refer to as the old ammo dump, which is basically just a hole in the ground. Where when you're in basic training, they'll put you on guard duty and leave your ass out there. And I served guard duty on that freaking ammo dump when I was in, but I didn't have any encounters. I mean, it was creepy as hell out there. Yeah. But there was nothing. I didn't see anything.
Yeah. I've been to the fort a few times, not very often though.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's some crazy stories that have come out of there. Because these guys spend a lot of time out in the woods, and in the fort, the fort is surrounded. Well, it's in a freaking national park.
Mm-hmm.
It's right there off of Mark Twain.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of weird crap in the Mark Twain too. In fact, there was an Ozarks Howler story not too long ago. I think about 10 years ago from the Mark Twain. A couple of girls, I think they were in their teens, stopped at the side of the road because they thought they'd seen like a dog. And it turned out it was the Howler, and it charged their vehicle, and it kept up with their vehicle for about 4 miles.
Wow.
Well, the road through the Twain is so freaking curvy, they couldn't get any real speed.
Right.
But, they were still doing 40, 45 miles an hour, and it kept up.
That's insane. That sounds like some of the old Mothman stuff there.
Yeah, I know. I would have been leaning out the window doing a mag dump if the damn thing was chasing my car.
Not me. I'd be trying to find a freaking camera. I'd be like, I got to get a picture of this.
David Bay says, I heard some weird sounds in the Fort Leonard Wood woods at night back in the 90s.
Yeah.
A lot of weird crap out of Fort Leonard Wood.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of weirdness in Missouri, period,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I was in high school and right after high school, I was in a cave crawler group, and it was back when I was much thinner and didn't have to walk with a cane. But we would go around different parts of the state and go crawling through these caves. Well, there was one on Leonard Wood that we got to go through, and it was if you go out past down the road past the PX and the one that's kind of exiting post.
Okay,
it's up on the top of that hill. You could get down into that cave. And we got permission to go back in there, and we weren't sure what it was, but we got pretty far back in the cave, and something growled at us. And we didn't want to take a chance it was a mountain lion or a bear, and we just got the hell out of there. But it was like this kind of a guttural growl. I can't say it's cryptid, but it was definitely creepy.
Right. Yeah, I have personally, it's funny. I'm a city boy. I grew up in St. Louis, and I moved down here about 17 years ago, and I personally have never seen anything here. But I've heard some weird shit.
Yeah.
I've heard some stuff in the woods that it was like, I don't know what that was, and I'm not going out there.
He says, doesn't the Mark Twain Forest also have a hellhound too? There's stories of hellhounds. We called it the Nixa hellhound, but I kind of think it might actually these hellhound stories. Yeah, that's like 10 miles from here.
Yeah.
But there's story you can Google the Nixa hellhound, and there's quite a few stories that we found on it. But I think the hellhound stories, quote unquote, here in Missouri, I think they're just howlers because most of the descriptions of the howlers. I think most of the descriptions of the howlers are like massive dogs that are the size of a bear.
Right.
Only difference being they've got horns sticking out of the back of their head and glowing red eyes.
Yeah, and that's a really good description of a hellhound too. I've heard some hellhound stories from around the country. Yeah, and
there was that one that attacked that church in England. I can't remember what that was called. But there was a hellhound story from England. Supposedly the the, 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 the church still has claw marks into the door to this day. Still has claw marks into the door to this day. But there was, a hellhound story from England. Supposedly the church still has claw marks into the church. Still has claw marks into the door to this day. But there was,
Central and East Texas. I bet there's some weird stuff down there.
You get into the Texas Big Thicket territory, and there's a lot of weird stories. A lot of Bigfoot encounters coming from East Texas.
You know, it's funny because when Ryan and I did, and I hate to keep throwing it out there, but when we did our Chupacabra episode, a lot of that was in Texas.
Well, there's a lot of those Chupacabra stories from down in East Texas and along the Texas-Mexico border. But the weird thing about the Chupacabra, and I know this, well, it's still a cryptid, so we'll talk about Chupacabra. Yeah, the weird thing about Chupacabra is if you look at the stories that come out of Texas, it almost looks like some sort of weird dog-like creature that's got like no hair, like it had severe
mange or something. Yeah.
But if you get down to Central America or over in Puerto Rico, they describe it as being more reptilian. Which I find is really weird.
There's a really good story about a guy in Mexico that had found one on his property, and I don't remember all the ins and outs of that story, but it was pretty graphic what he was describing. And basically, it was down there, and it was killing his cattle.
Hey, Nelma, how's it going?
Hey.
How are you doing tonight?
Oh, did I lose you?
I still
here.
Yeah, we still got you.
Okay. I had to close it. I was getting double, and I thought I clicked the wrong thing.
Well,
but I shut down the wrong window. So continue your talking. Don't let me interrupt.
We're just talking about cryptids.
Yeah. We're just having a good time, Gavin.
That's a subject I've never discussed before.
What's well, then let's get into it. You might.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, let me make the formal introductions. JT, Naoma. This is JT.
Hello,
What's going on?
Naoma has the channel Naoma Finn Storyteller. Awesome channel.
Nice. I'm gonna have to subscribe to that.
Did you see my little comment earlier? I need a copy of that. Of that thing you put up for the conference in August, because I've been talking about it on my channel, but I don't have anything to put up.
I'll send you a couple of the images of it.
Thanks.
Not a problem.
Yeah, Ryan and I were hoping to go down for that.
Definitely going to be there. I'll be the fat lady walking around with the gimp.
Hey, Naoma, now that your channel has grown so big, you can go in and customize your link. So you don't just have all the random characters, but I'm going to post the link to Naoma's channel. If you guys have not checked out Naoma Finn Storyteller, the link is now in the chat. Go over, like, subscribe, show some love, and I'll throw the Horror Chronicles up again for those of you who might have missed it.
Ooh, I need to subscribe to the Horror Chronicles.
Yeah, those guys are weird, though.
They are.
Really, really bizarre guys.
Oh, I can't click on those.
No.
Well, that's
you can copy and paste them.
That's what I was going to do here.
We were talking about places with weird place names a few minutes ago. And one of the coolest of the weird place names was one you actually brought to my attention, Werewolf Springs.
Yeah.
I love the story around that. Would you give us a little of
that? Werewolf Springs is located in the southern part of Montgomery Bell State Park here in Tennessee. It's just north of where the conference is going to be in Paris. You're going to probably drive right by it. So I'm hoping if you have time, maybe we could drive up to it.
I would love to.
Montgomery Bell was, of course, claimed by the government. And turned into a park many years ago. And there was a spring there at the bottom part of the park that, I can't remember. The Hall family owned that land there. And I believe the spring is officially called Hall Spring to this day. But back in the late 1800s, there was a man who was headed east. He was headed home to his farm. He had a worker with him. And they were on a wagon, and they began to notice that they were being stalked by something. They would speed up. It would speed up with them. They would slow down. It would slow down with them. They got so freaked out that both men jumped from the wagon and ran in opposite directions. And whatever it was chased the worker. And the man who owned the wagon hid in the woods and listened to his employee being ripped apart by this thing. And that was pretty much the first indication that there's something weird going on there. There have been a lot of cases where people have been down there. Montgomery Bell State Park is actually a very well manicured park. It's not just a clump of woods. There's lots of trails. There's a golf course. There's a hotel. It's a really nice place. It's not where you would expect to find a cryptid. But there have been people down there who have actually heard screams, howling. And there was one young girl who was down at the springs. She went down to collect some water, and she was never seen again. And they have no idea what happened to her.
Wow.
There are some caves along one of the lakes. I think there's 3 lakes there. And there are some caves along one of those lakes that they've found skeletons in. And a lot of them are the skeletons of like cows and horses, because apparently the farmers would often take their dead animals up to those caves and leave them to keep them away from the farm and the smell, whatever. But there are also some human bones in those caves.
Oh.
They can't explain those.
That's bizarre. Well, there's a place down near Eminence, Missouri, where there was a rancher who was running cattle, and he kept getting calves and heifers were going missing, and he started trying to follow the trail of whatever was taking them, and he found a cave that the entrance was littered with bones, and he was convinced that some of them were human, but he couldn't get the Missouri Department of Conservation to even go look at it.
That's crazy. You would think that they would want to go check that out.
Yeah, they told him to stay away from it. They said it was probably a bear. Black bears don't drag off cattle. They're not big enough.
And if black bears are eating people, they might want to do something about that.
That's a black bear you want to put down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Not one you want to hang out with, that's for sure.
Eminence isn't too far from us. I mean,
yeah, Eminence is a pretty creepy area in and of itself. That's why I set one of my books down there.
Yeah.
What was the name of that town that you used to drive through all the time? Have you ever
Hardy, Arkansas?
Have you ever gotten into that? Because I've been waiting for that. Did I miss it?
No, we haven't done a show on Hardy. When we decide to do it, I want you to come on, because
I will definitely be here.
Hardy is one of those just creepy little towns. My wife and I kind of discovered Hardy, Arkansas, because we had some friends that lived in Jonesboro, and it's like right on the path from Springfield to Jonesboro. Well, Hardy is one of those little towns where they roll up the sidewalks at sundown, and there was just one creepy old house there that just kind of drew my attention, and I stopped and was looking at it one time. It was right at dusk, and a local officer pulled up and told me that it's probably not a good idea for me to be in town after dark. And I was like, oh, that's what we refer to as a clue.
Yeah.
Time to go.
Yeah.
That's a reason to leave, definitely.
No kidding. Hey, we got a new member. David Bay became a member. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that.
Hey, you know how to tell the difference between a Bigfoot and a bear?
Thumbs?
Yeah, when it's running at you, go, hey, and if it goes, hey, back, it is not a bear.
Or if it tries your doorknob at night, it's not a bear.
Nope.
You know, that's something you don't hear much about. I mean, is these things trying to get in houses?
I have heard a few stories about that, about
really
doorknobs. But the funny thing is if it really wanted in, most doors aren't going to stop a 1,000-pound primate.
Right.
Now, if it wanted in, it's coming in.
Right. And there's nothing you can do to stop it.
No, they don't generally ask.
Yeah.
It's not like a vampire. You got to invite a vampire in,
A vampire Bigfoot, that's a terrifying thought.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's a good thing, because they can't come in unless you invite them.
Yeah. See?
Yeah, but you know how many people would be like drained like raisins if there was a vampire Bigfoot? Yeah. You'd think Arkansas mosquitoes got a hold of them.
Just get you some Jack's Links. You'll be all right.
That'd be quite a trip, I think.
Yes, it would.
Not one I'd want to go on, but I'd certainly want pictures.
Yeah. You're trying to repel Bigfoot with a cross and a clove of garlic.
Water gun.
Right. Somebody get a mirror.
With I don't know.
Mark Napier says, for some reason, Bigfoot has trouble with glass windows.
Yeah, what is that about?
Again, I think it's just a matter of them. They're just messing with you. because if they wanted in your house, they could get in. I mean, they stick an arm through a window and yank part of the wall off. I mean, this is an obviously powerful animal.
Absolutely.
I mean, if it's capable of ripping like a horse's head off, it's capable of ripping your door off its hinges.
And yet it knocks on the window.
Or slaps its hand on the wall of your house.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, do you have any more nocturnal visitors?
I haven't in a while, thank God. Ever since Brad retired, I haven't. I think one night we woke up in the middle of the night and he said, "What was that?" And I was like, "Nothing, go back to sleep."
Well, yeah, it was very compelling to me that it only happened when he wasn't at home.
Yeah, I think that says a lot about it. But
maybe it was afraid of him.
I think that it was trying to mark its turf. I think Bigfoot had a crush on me.
He's wanting to take you to the Bigfoot prom.
Ooh, that'd be an ugly picture.
Bigfoot got limo.
I want to see you get a tux on one of them things.
I want to see one pin a corsage on me.
It's
it may literally be on you.
Yeah, I know, right?
His cummerbund is an actual bear.
Yeah,
sounds like something you'd hear about in Arkansas. Going to prom with a bear.
Yeah.
That makes me think of that scene in Super Troopers.
Which one?
With the bear costume.
Oh, yeah.
We probably shouldn't repeat that on the air, but I love that movie though.
Yeah,
me too.
Pull over. We're pulled over as far as we can.
Meow.
You boys been to Mexico?
Meow. You meowing? No. Meow.
Yeah. Do I look like a cat to you?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I love that
God, I
movie.
haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah.
My older son, Papa Bear, he loves that movie. He's the one that turned me on to Super Troopers.
Yeah.
And
when I was still a cop, all my buddies loved that movie. That and Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they set out to make a comedy and made the best buddy cop film ever made.
For sure. For sure.
1980 CNH says, Bigfoot in a tux. It's a picture I can't get out of my head now.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Since it
They
started
were always
banging on.
throwing out those hard-hitting things.
Oh, yeah. Things that make you go,
Or things that make you go, oh, JT.
As long as it's not things to make me go, "Ooh," we're fine.
Oh, we do a lot of that.
It's hard to make me go, "Ooh."
Yeah.
Spiders.
Well, if
pretty much,
Ryan was
that's it.
here, he'd be trying.
Well, then, Naomi, you're not going to like the newest book.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, no.
There's some scenes in there you're not going to like very much.
Nice.
I won't give away any details, but they'll just say you're not going to like them very much.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Fair
I'll just-
warning.
Yeah.
Fair warning. When you read Dark Moon, that comes with some trigger warnings there.
Cool.
I need to
Just
get
what
in
I
and pick
wanted to
that
hear.
up, man.
Ooh.
Good old Amazon.
Yeah. I'm so poor I can't pay attention right now. I've got a whole list of books. I mean, like 3 pages of books that I'm going to buy. In fact, here's what I added today to my list. You can't see it, but there's about that much on there.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
It's crazy. A lot of times I end up picking up books at like conventions or stuff, and to me, that's a good place to do it, because you're helping whoever out, and I know when Ryan and we went to the Haunted America conference last year and had a blast. We met all kinds of people there, and I picked up a bunch of different stuff. I'm really big into paranormal, so I read a lot of ghost story books and stuff like that, but I did pick up some strange experience stuff too. A lot of UFO stuff. There was a guy there, his name's Tobias Whalen, and he is really big into Mothman, He is in the Chicago area, and he's got a team of people that he goes out with, and they scour the woods looking for Bigfoot or any kind of cryptid. But he's got a couple of books on Mothman that are really interesting.
I might have to pick those up. There's a lot of cryptid stories that come out of Illinois.
Yeah.
There's been a number of Wendigo sightings that I've heard about. Of course, you've got the Big Muddy Monster. That was a pretty famous incident. But I've got an image I want to throw up for here real quick before it becomes non-topical anymore. It's amazing what you can find on Google Images.
Hey, there he is. There he
Bigfoot and the
is.
Ducks. Yep.
That's Bigfoot,
Nice.
the lounge singer.
It looks like
Nice.
Bigfoot Elvis to me.
Yeah, can you hear him belting out? It's not unusual.
Oh, but it is.
Oh, yeah,
It
it's
is.
definitely unusual. But yeah, you're right.
You
There's
just
a
gotta love
lot of
that
stuff.
image.
There's a lot of stuff in Illinois. I've heard of a lot of different stories from over there. A lot of paranormal stuff. You know, and some cryptid stuff, like you were saying. And it's really there's a big story about the Chicago O'Hare Airport.
Mhm.
And
There's quite a few Mothman sightings near there.
yes, there was a big story about a guy that he was one of the maintenance workers, and something had busted through the back fence at the back of the runway area, and they couldn't ever figure out what it was, but they saw something. They couldn't explain it though, but literally scared the guy to death. He ended up having to call in one of the other workers to help him out of there because he was so freaked out.
Wouldn't you be?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, when you look at something like Mothman, you know, it ranges in size, but the descriptions are usually spot on. You know, imagine a freaking 8-foot bird-like creature coming at you.
JT, I think this comment's for you.
Hey, what up, fucker? Oh, sorry.
Would you
You're
believe
funny.
that I actually had to do this? Was he talking about me? No, my shirt's blue. Okay, I'm good.
I'm black. I'm good.
No, that was actually my co-host, the founder of our show, Mr. Ryan Burke. If I could get that son of a bitch over here to record with me. He's
Ooh,
probably not
so-
even in here anymore.
He probably already left.
He
David
gave up
By
on it.
says, "Isn't Mothman usually a harbinger of bad things?"
It typically is. Usually it shows up right
that explains why it's
some
hanging
major
around
tragic
Chicago.
event.
Yeah. Staying out of Chicago until something really horrendous happens, and I'll go back.
Yeah,
Dark
well,
Waters had a story about a gargoyle.
in the port of New Orleans. That would be cool. I've got to look that one
Wow.
up.
There are quite a few gargoyle stories
I'm in,
across
brother, I'm
Texas
in.
that fascinate me. The one that fascinates me the most is the one that happened at the NASA there in Houston.
Cape
The guy was
no,
leaving
that's
work late
is it
one
Cape
night.
Canaveral.
No, it's
No, that's in Florida.
yeah.
That's Kennedy Space Center.
There you go.
But he was leaving work late one night and he saw it up on one of the roofs. Didn't talk about it for several days. Totally freaked out by it naturally. Finally, he mentioned it to a coworker who took him to a boss, and it turns out that they have an entire unofficial file on employees who have seen the gargoyle there at the NASA Center.
Wow.
Yeah. You have to look it up. It's a really fascinating story.
That's
I will
crazy.
look that up. I will definitely be looking that up.
Yep.
Yeah, we did a show on gargoyles. That was still
Yeah.
when you were on.
Mm-hmm.
That was an
Yeah.
interesting night.
Dude,
About
that
this
would be
time.
interesting. That's something we've never really talked about that much. Yeah, that would be. I need to look into some of that.
Yeah, just look up gargoyles in Texas, and you'll be amazed at the number of stories you come across of people who have been chased by them in their cars or seen them. There's a story of I think it was a lady who happened to look out her bedroom window, second story, and she looks out, and across the way there's a gargoyle sitting on the roof of her neighbor's house. There's the one at the Space Center, and there's, they're just all over the place. It's fascinating. Unbelievable how many gargoyle sightings there have been in Texas, and very few people talk about them.
Well, there's also a lot of Thunderbird sightings in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. I mean, some in Utah as well.
I always think of Thunderbirds as being an Illinois thing because I remember growing up. I may have been an adult by the time I read about it, but there was a kid who was supposedly picked up and carried quite a distance by one.
Oh, is that the Piasaw? Is that what you're talking about?
I just remember it happened in Illinois.
So as you go into Illinois from the Missouri side, as you go across the river, like if you go across the Clark Bridge, you'll end up on what they call the Great River Road. And if you take that north, it'll take you up through Alton and Godfrey.
All the way up to my hometown and beyond.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm from the Quad Cities.
As you go up there to the right, there's a cliff, and they've got this old painting that was put up there. I don't even know how long ago. They've actually redone the painting. They went up and retouched it up or whatever. But it is what they call the Piasaw, and it is essentially a thunderbird. And it was a creature that roamed that area back during, when it was inhabited by Native Americans.
Yeah.
There's a lot of story behind that.
Yeah, that's I believe that's the same area where that kid was carried off. So
yeah.
I don't mean to change the subject, but I just happened to see something here. Did anybody happen to see the link that Noel put up? Do It Noel's Way. Leon, is that his real name? I can never remember.
Yeah, Leon.
Put up on his site for the new Dogman movie by Small Town Monsters.
I have not had a chance to watch that yet, but I'm going to very soon.
I've
been waiting for it to show up on Amazon. Yesterday I was looking for it. I couldn't find it.
I had to find it on Hulu. No.
On who?
Voodoo.
On Voodoo?
Voodoo. Okay. All right.
And
Voodoo account. So I may have to either get one or just wait for it to get to Amazon because I know it's supposed to be on Amazon.
It was.
Yeah, it'll pop up there
watching
pretty soon, I'm sure.
I watched it this afternoon and loved every minute of it. It's a little different from what they usually do. They're usually more about taking you to the sites and discussing the physical aspects but this is almost completely eyewitness accounts, and some of them are just kept me on the edge of my seat. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it. Small Town Monsters, those guys do a great job. They've got so many really good documentaries.
They do.
Their YouTube channel in and of itself is good, but the actual documentaries you've got to rent or purchase far and away are better than the videos.
Very well filmed, and they're just fantastic.
Yeah, I think I've watched all of them now. I'm pretty hooked on their stuff.
Oh yeah.
So. Well, Eli from Small Town Monsters, Eli Lawson, he's the one that narrated the first Lakeview Man book.
Yeah.
Eli's a good guy. I like him a lot.
Oh yeah.
I need to get him back on the show. We had him on one night.
Yeah, I think I caught the very tail end of that. It was, I think, right after I had to leave the show.
Yeah, I think it was right around that time.
Yeah.
Eli's a pretty interesting kid. Well, I say kid, he's a grown man, but to me, he's a kid.
Well, that's because we're old.
Yeah, it's because we're old.
Yeah. I watched Brad Upton today. Have you seen him? He's hilarious.
I have not.
He's a comedian that you just have to Google him or look at him on YouTube. Mm-hmm. He talks about me. He's an older guy. He's not a young comedian at all. he talks about being old and how he was really disgusted with this old guy that was just doing the kind of things that old people do. And he was so furious and he was watching him and all of a sudden he looks close. He's like, oh, I graduated high school with him. And I thought, yeah, that's me.
I have to call my kids for technology old, but I'm not get out of my yard old.
Yeah.
I'm get out of my yard old.
I don't know. I'm getting to that point.
Technology old.
But you live far enough out in the woods that if somebody's in your yard, JT, you've got a reason to tell them to get the hell out of the yard.
You're right.
They're up to something if they're in your yard.
We did have a freaky instance whenever we first moved here. This was before I built, this garage. We were sitting in the living room, and I've got a picture window in our living room, and when you look out you're looking straight down my driveway. And we're just sitting there, and then all of a sudden I see those, I don't know, little blonde-haired kid with no shirt on just running through the yard. Like, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What the hell was that? I jump up, and I run outside, and this kid's gone. I have no idea where he ran to. But he wasn't anywhere near the house. But it was weird. It was like he ran around a clove of trees off the road and ran right through our yard and up into the woods. And
that's weird.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
We had something almost identical to that just last fall. We live on a street with several other houses, but behind us, the houses across from us is cow pastures, and behind us is woods and farm fields.
Yeah.
And I was looking out my back window, and this kid goes run about 7 or 8 years old, goes running across my backyard down into the ravine. The woods is just a really big ravine, and I'm watching and I was worried because he wasn't running fast. He was just kind of jogging, but he was looking around like he was scared. And so I thought something's not right here. So I get my car and I drive around to where the woods end, and he couldn't find him. So I thought, well, maybe he's hiding down in the ravine. So I went back home and I walked up and down the woods, couldn't find him. Don't know where he went, but he just loped through my backyard, just kind of slow, but he was looking around like he was scared, almost like he was in tears. And I thought, this can't be right. There's something wrong with this, situation. But whatever it was, I never did find the kid.
Well, and that's kind of how it was for me and this kid. Now, I've got some neighbors, but we're not like right on top of each other. I mean, they're like across the road or up around the hill, I can only see like one or two houses from my property. And I have no idea where this kid came from. He didn't look familiar. I didn't get a good shot of him. I just saw him running, and he was running straight towards me. So I saw his face, and I was like, I don't know. It was just bizarre.
Yeah, this kid, we have a few kids at the end of our road, but I didn't recognize him as being any one of them. Plus, he was headed sort of in the wrong direction to be. It's just very strange. It's interesting that you said that because it reminds me so much of that. And I just think if I had seen where the kid ended up, I'd have been okay.
Right,
but
right.
I don't even... That ravine is it just goes, the woods go to a certain point and then they just drop off. And I don't even know how that kid.
Yeah. Where he would have went to.
How he would have got down in the ravine and back up.
Right.
Or if he'd run, it didn't make sense. It's just a big crater back there. And
it could have possibly been paranormal.
Well, it could have been because if you don't have any other excuse for it and you can't find a scientific answer. Right. You have to go to paranormal till you do. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
Kind of like the house we lived in before this one, when we lived out on the south side of town. My wife said she looked up, and at the end of the hallway, there was a little girl dressed in like 1800 style clothing. And she looked at her. The little girl looked at her and said, "Mama." And before she could get out of the chair, the girl was gone. And when she told me that story, I was like, really? But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know. Well, I love my wife dearly, but she's more attuned to stuff like that. I'm like a brick. And I was kind of, I believed her, but at the same time, I was like, I haven't never seen anything like that. And I don't get the heebie-jeebies here. One night I was coming home from a late shift in uniform, and I go to pull in the driveway, and this little girl in 1800 style clothes leans out from behind one of our little shrubs at the edge of the driveway, and I saw her plain as day, to the point I jumped out of the car and went running around the house looking for her.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, of course, she was gone.
There was a lady that had a daycare in her house up in my hometown, and I think the limit is 5 kids that you can have, and she had her limit, and it was lunchtime, and she had, a counter with a big window so she could see into the living room where the kids were sitting and watching TV, and she was counting, make sure she had enough sandwiches for each of the kids. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And she turned and she thought, 6, that can't be right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Okay, I know I just counted 6. She goes in the living room. There's 5 kids. She goes back in the kitchen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Wow.
They're all sitting with their backs to her, so she walks back into the living room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She said twice she counted 6 kids, never could figure out where the 6th one came from.
That's
cool.
That same house we lived in, like I said, other than seeing the little girl, I didn't really experience anything. But my oldest son, his room was upstairs, and he said he would come home from school and his closet door would be open and the light was on, and he would turn the light off and shut the door, and he'd go to bed and he'd get up in the morning and the closet door would be open and the light would be on. It got to the point he would like push his dresser against the closet door because it freaked him out.
To keep it from opening.
Yeah. He said every time he turned around, it'd be open.
Yeah.
He said at night sometimes he'd get the feeling something was watching him.
When I was a kid growing up, and it's funny, I don't know that I've ever told this story on the air because really, honestly, it's not my story. It's my sister's story. When we lived in St. Louis, at one point, it was me and my sister and my mother, and we lived with my grandmother. My mom and my grandmother had bought a house together, and we were in South St. Louis. And this house, it was a 2-story house. At one time, it used to be an apartment. There was an upper apartment and a lower apartment. Well, whoever lived there before us had converted it into a single family home. In the living room, so there was 3 rooms on each floor, 3 big rooms on each floor. In the middle room, which was the living room, there was a spiral staircase that went upstairs. Now, upstairs, what we did was we had my mom's bedroom in the front, my sister's bedroom was in the center, and my bedroom was on the other end of the house. Well, the spiral staircase came up into my sister's bedroom, and she had numerous times had told my mother a story about a woman standing at the top of the staircase, which my sister's bed was against one wall. So laying in bed, all she'd have to do was lift her head and she was looking right at the staircase. And, my mom never really believed her. And my sister actually had some friends of hers that had stayed over, and they claimed, one of them had claimed to have seen somebody. They thought it was my grandmother standing at the top of the stairs. Well, my grandmother's bedroom was downstairs and she was never up late at night. This went on for a long time, and my sister finally described her, and she was like, oh, she had, long dark hair, and she was wearing this white flowing gown, and she was just standing there at the top of the stairs looking at me. And, finally my grandmother, she's like, okay, hold on. My grandmother goes in and she gets a photo album and she starts flipping through photos. And my sister is like, whoa, wait, that's her. It would have been my great grandmother, my grandmother's mother. And my sister swears that is her. That's who was standing there. Well, to add to that, my sister used to say that she would also see about a quarter of the way down the stairs, she would see a little girl just sitting on the staircase playing with a doll. I never saw any of that. I tried forever because I have wanted to see a ghost my entire life, and I've seen some weird stuff, but I don't know that I've ever seen a full body apparition. And, for my sister to experience that and me being in the bedroom right next to her, it just pisses me off. But yeah, interesting story.
I actually saw a ghost in the farmhouse that we lived in for my first husband and I, we lived in the farmhouse for, I don't know, 19 years. And it was the family farm. And his grandmother had lived there, her parents and her parents before. My kids were young. My oldest was probably 12. I was in charge of the spring frolic for the PTC that year. So I was on the phone. It was probably 9 o'clock at night. My then husband was working. He worked second shift, so he wasn't home yet. And that, or he worked third shift because it was a swing shift. But I know he wasn't home. He'd either already gone into work or hadn't come home yet. And I was talking to her on the phone, doing the dishes up for the night, and we were going over the plans for everything that I needed to be done and whatnot. And my older son's bedroom was directly above us, and it was an old farmhouse. It was gravity fed heat, so the air duct between us was basically just a hole. And as I was talking, I heard him come up behind me. Sometimes late at night, he'd come down if he knew I was, and he'd either talk to me or I'd hand him a towel and he'd dry dishes or whatever. And I heard him come up behind me as I'm talking to Tammy on the phone. And it's one of those, back in the very early days of cordless phones with the long, metal antenna. And
I remember those.
I've got this in my ear and I'm doing dishes. And I turned around to hand my older son a towel. And this little woman with glasses, she dissipated. She was solid, and then she just dissolved right in front of me. And I screamed into the phone, "Oh my God, Tammy, I've just seen a ghost." And of course my heart's pounding and I'm walking in circles around the kitchen. I got to go upstairs. I got to go be where my kids are. I can't be down here alone. And I go flying up the stairs and around the corner and into my bedroom. And I sat down on my bed and I'm like, "Okay, I'll talk to you later." I hang up the phone. And as I'm sitting on the bed, my bed sat up. My younger son, who was about 8 at the time, had apparently gotten into my bed, and I took that phone and I whacked it right at that thing. I hit my poor boy right here in the forehead. He had a welt from that stupid phone. I didn't know who it was. All I knew was my bed sat up.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was we had all kinds of interesting things happen in that house. One of the things, there was a downstairs room that it was sort of a TV room in my office because I did freelance secretarial work and I worked from home. And I was sitting in there one night, done with my work, sitting in the easy chair, turn on the TV. And I happen to notice it's dark out. So there's 3 windows, 2 on this wall and 1 on the front of the house. And they all have mini blinds. And I get up and I twist to make all the mini blinds do this. And I twisted all 3 windows and I sat down, and as I'm sitting in the easy chair, every one of those mini blinds went like this. And I said, "Okay, if you want to see outside, I'm good with that, but I am not staying here with you." And I got up and I went to bed. And we had a lot of cases where my older son was not my then husband's biological son, just my younger son was. And for whatever reason, this thing picked on me and the older son. And our washer and dryer was in the basement, and it was the old slat stairs, open. And I was headed down the stairs with a big laundry basket full of clothes in my hand to do laundry. And I felt something come up behind or reach out from under the stairs and grab my ankle. And I went toppling down the stairs. Fortunately, I was holding a laundry basket, and it probably saved me from breaking my neck. But the same thing happened to my older son.
One of the things that freaks me out.
Yeah.
Any of those stairs that's open in the back, those freak me out every time I go down the side.
When I talk about that, I can still feel that hand on my ankle. I mean, it's just like, and it wasn't warm.
I tell you, even as old as I am now, I still have this fear of something reaching out from underneath the bed and grabbing my foot as I'm getting in bed. I don't know why.
As a kid, running and jumping to avoid.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know why. I still have that.
I sleep with one leg hanging over the bed, off the bed.
Yeah, see, I can't do that. I got to have my feet covered.
But I can't stand beside the bed at night because I think something's going to reach out and grab it. But I have to have that one leg out. and out from under the covers till it gets so cold I can't stand it, and then I'll pull it up underneath the covers. But
right, yeah, I get it.
I can't stand beside the bed at night because I always think something's going to grab. And I'm 57 years old. Why do I still do that? I don't know, but I do.
I'm with you. My sister's kind of the same way. She can't sleep. She has to sleep with her feet flat up against something, either the bed or, well, and I don't know so much anymore, but for years, like when we were younger, she used to tell me, like, and this was even when she got older and got married, she would have to sleep with her feet flat against something. If she didn't, every time she would have the same nightmare of some old hag standing at the end of her bed trying to tickle her feet.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's common among night terrors. People that have night terrors, they either report it being an old hag or like a dark figure of a man with one of those old wide brim hats.
Oh, yeah.
It's really, it's like universal.
Dude, that's that shadow people. They call him the Hat Man.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep paralysis actually deals with the old hag a lot. But I've got a really cool little story about shadow people. When I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I moved in with my best friend and his wife, and we fixed up a bedroom in the basement for me, and I was living there with them for a while. And a lot of times at night, you know, some days I'd work the night shift, so I would be up late at night. Well, my buddy would go to bed, and his wife didn't work. She was just a housewife, you know, and she it was funny. I would play video games a lot, and I'd be sitting on one end of the couch and she'd be sitting on the other end of the couch, and she'd be reading a book or talking to me about the game. And she always drank coffee. She always had a cup of coffee with her, you know, either on the table or in her hand or something. And one night I'm sitting there playing a game, and I catch a glimpse of something go through the dining room door, and I kind of looked over at it and was like, okay, you know, and then I went back to playing my game, and a little bit later I noticed it again, and I was like, what in the hell? And you know, and I was like, okay, it's my eyes playing tricks on me. And so you know, I went back to playing my game, and then all of a sudden I saw it again, but I got a really good glimpse of it, and it looked like a human form, but it was a shadow, went darting through that doorway. And finally I stopped, and I laid my controller down in my lap, and I'm like, what in the? And I turn around and look at her, and there she sits with her coffee cup, and she's staring right at me, and she's like, did you see that too? And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to bed. She's like, yeah. She said, I see that occasionally, but that was like there, you know? And I was like, yeah, that was trippy. We don't know what that was. And they lived in an old house too. So
one of the most haunted places in America is recognized to be the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas.
Yes.
It is just absolutely a creepy old place. Really neat architecture. Well, I took my wife down there. This has been a few years back, and I've been wanting to spend the night in it, and she's like adamant against it. But we went down and we're wanting to do the ghost tour. Well, the lady at the counter said, well, you know, we're not doing tours today. We've got multiple weddings booked. So there's no ghost tours today. And I said, oh, okay. And I started to, I don't know what I was doing, but she saw my badge clipped in my belt because I was a deputy at the time. She goes, are you a cop? I said, yes, ma'am. And I showed her my credentials. She goes, well, to me, that says you're trustworthy enough. Why don't you just go look around? You can go anywhere you want, but don't go into any of the roped off areas. That's where the weddings are. She says, but you're free to walk around the hotel and check anything else out. And she told us which rooms were the most haunted rooms. She goes, but those rooms are occupied, so you can't go in them. But just so you know, these are the rooms that get the most reported sightings. So we're walking around the hotel, and they've got a little elevator that's kind of janky, but it's still an elevator. But so we were going down to like the basement and walking around and stuff, and we got up onto one of the floors where the rooms were at, where some of the most activity is said to be heard, like hearing squeaky wheels of like a hospital gurney going down the hallway at night and things like that. Well, we walked up to the door of this room, and she started to touch it, and she said it felt like electricity hitting her fingers, and she won't go back to that hotel. She won't step foot in it.
I've been wanting to go there. I hear it's a cool place.
It is really neat. But to hear the history of that place, man, there's so many deaths around that building. It is, I mean, even when it was being built, there was a guy was killed under mysterious circumstances on the grounds.
Yeah. Have you guys ever heard of Limp Mansion?
Yes. In St. Louis?
Most people have heard of that place. Okay. So I have been fascinated with the Limp family and, and everything pretty much my whole life. I grew up in St. Louis, and it was a big prominent thing, and I did a lot of research on it, and I could get way deep into the family, but this is not a place to do that. But one year I was in my mid-20s, and a bunch of us buddies decided we were going to rent a room there one night, and it was during October, but they were having a big, huge wedding there, and they pretty much told us we could go anywhere we wanted to, but don't go up on the third floor. So we were like, okay, well, it was, I don't know, 2:00 in the morning or something. I ended up getting out of my room. It was funny. It was me and a couple girls that were with a couple of my buddies. And we got out of the room. We're just kind of walking around, and, don't tell me not to go to the third floor. So I end up going up the back staircase up to the third floor. Now, when you get up there, there is there's one room up there that you can rent right when you get to the top of the staircase. Well, that door was wide open and the light was on in there. So I just kind of poked my head in and, kind of looked around. I was like, wow, it's a pretty nice room or whatever. Well, right beside that doorway is a door that it said, I can't remember if it said keep out or do not enter or something like that or whatever. And I noticed the door was cracked open, and I was like, I just kind of pushed it open. And I realized I'm looking down a dark corridor, and it's basically the attic of the Limp Mansion. And I'm like, all right, so, here I am. I'm with these two girls. We don't have a flashlight. So I had a Zippo lighter. So I pull out my Zippo lighter and I light it. And this is straight out of a horror film. I should have known better. But we're walking through there, and it's weird. Like you're walking down these planks of wood that are going over the rafters. And as you look off to the side, you can see it's kind of open. And like as you go by, like there's stuff sitting out there that that they've stored. And so we walk by, and one of the things we saw off to the side was this like old time baby carriage, the ones with the 4 wheels and the hood, like old school. I mean, this thing was old. I was like, wow, man, that's creepy, So anyway, it was off to the side. So we walked down this little corridor, and it wasn't very far. I'd say it was 20, 30 feet at the most, and as you get down to the end, the roof line starts coming down, and it came down to a section where there was a window, like right on the floor. But to be able to look out that window, you had to get on your hands and knees and like crawl into a crawl space. So I'm like, all right, I'm going in, So I get on my hands and knees and I go out and I look out that window, and you're overlooking like their beer garden area and, where they have their big parties or whatever. And I notice as I look to the left and the right, it's almost like there's a secret, not really, but it's like there's a passageway going around the attic that you can't see from being inside the attic. Well, I didn't crawl through there because I'm not really big into bugs and spiders and all that crap. I'm just not into them. So we're like, okay, well, this is cool. So we turn around to head back out, and we're walking down the corridor, and it's like, okay, yeah, there's some weird stuff here. There's some weird stuff there. There's this baby carriage. We walk around the baby carriage and head out the door. I don't know if you caught that, but when we went through there the first time, that baby carriage was not sitting in that corridor.
Ooh.
Very trippy. Very trippy. That was the only weird experience I really had there. There's a lot of people talk about seeing, manifestations down in the dining room, at the top of the staircase. I took a ton of photos there and didn't see anything. but the baby carriage was a trip.
Yeah.
Because it was not in our way when we walked through there the first time.
That would have been would you look at the time?
Yeah. Well, we headed back to our room. So
definitely not the reality I'd want to live in.
Yeah, but a very cool place. If you ever get a chance to go there, they do ghost tours, and they actually have a really cool like dinner theater. Mm-hmm. Where everybody becomes a character and you act out, the scenes or whatever. I've actually done that 2 or 3 times there, and it's really fun, and the food is amazing there.
Well, there's
they do
all kinds of
mystery nights.
Huh?
Do they do mystery nights there too?
Well, it's like these dinner theaters are like a murder mystery.
I love those.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of weird stories out of the Pythian Castle here in Springfield.
Yes.
Yeah, that place is creepy. It was originally built by the Knights of Pythias, which is one of those kind of secret society groups, kind of like the Masons.
Right.
But I don't know much about them.
Well, at one time, it was a hospital for the military, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a hospital. It's where they held POWs in World War II. That's right. They had prisoners. And it was the Knights of Pythias donated it to become an orphanage because it's a huge building, and it was an orphanage for a long time. And then during World War II, they held both Japanese and German prisoners there. And supposedly a number of people that have gone down in the basement where some of the cells were have not only been shoved, but scratched.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get down there and check that place out.
Me too. I want to get in there.
We were going to try and go. We were actually going to meet up with you at one time and go, but at that time they were closed because
of the Big C.
Yeah.
The Black Plague of the 21st century.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that they're starting to open things up again, I would definitely want to get in there and do some tours.
Yeah,
that'd be a great place to shoot some video if we can keep the batteries on our cameras alive.
Yeah, I've actually watched some documentaries about that place, and it looks cool. My niece actually went down there a few years ago, and she said it was pretty neat. She
Tyson Ghost Hunters did a show there.
They were wanting me to go, but whenever they were coming through town, I was deathly ill. I mean, I was like bedridden, and they were really wanting me to go with them because now my niece has gotten really big into paranormal and stuff, and I don't know if I have anything to do with that, but maybe. But she said it was really cool. She had a lot of fun down there. Now my sister's big fraidy cat, so she didn't dig it too much, but
could just be genetic.
They
inherited it from you.
I've been around the building and up on the porch, but it was closed the times I've been over there, and so we didn't really get to go inside. But I've looked through the windows and it looks like a pretty creepy place. I definitely want to get in there and do some filming.
Yeah, another place I'd like to go is the prison.
Yes,
Missouri
Jeff
State
City.
Penitentiary. Yeah.
My dad was a guard there back during the riot in the 40s. Isn't that what's his name?
I don't like spiders and snakes.
Right. I know
and
the song, but I
what
can't
it
think of his
takes
name.
to love me. You fool. Jim Stafford.
Jim Stafford, that's right. He has this theater down in Branson.
Yep.
I don't know that I've ever heard that.
That's an old song.
That's a very old song. Like Lenita and I are showing our age.
That's like 70s or early. I think
no,
it's late
70s. Yeah, like 72, 73.
Yeah, I remember hearing it growing up because my mom had such a huge album collection.
I was alive then.
Yeah, still in
I'm
diapers.
pretty damn young, but
Same.
You're not really alive till you've learned to use the bathroom.
yeah. Well, okay. Well, that was probably about 73 or so.
Yeah.
Actually, that was 2018. Whenever I used the bathroom. Oh.
Depends on what day of the week it is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Anyway, she popped that up, and I knew instantly what song.
I knew the song. I just couldn't think of the guy that sang it. Well, I knew he had a theater down in Branson. I just couldn't remember his name.
I didn't even know he was still alive. So there you go.
Well, look at that.
Okay.
Well, folks, we are coming up on the almost heading for the top of the third hour. I think we'll start wrapping things up.
Yeah, I was
JT,
thinking I need to go to bed.
Thank you guys for coming on and
yeah, absolutely, man. It's fun. I love your show, man. I love coming on here and running my mouth.
Feels like old times.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, you guys are welcome anytime. If we're doing a show and you guys want to jump in and talk about the subject, shoot me a message. I'll shoot you a link.
Excellent. So
StreamYard lets me have up to like 10 people on the screen at a time.
Nice.
And, so if it's a topic you guys want to talk about, shoot me a message. I'll shoot you the link.
Well, most of the time it would probably just be me, unless I can get Ryan to come over here.
Well, he's
Ryan
only 3 miles away. He could get over there pretty quick.
He could. He could actually probably pull this off with his cell phone.
Probably. Well, Josh that was on earlier was on his cell phone, so it'll definitely work. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
I was just going to tell everybody, I was just going to say thank you to everybody that's been in the chat tonight. We've had a really active chat. A lot of great folks in the chat tonight. Make sure you guys check out those links. I shared the links for Naoma's channel, for Horror Chronicles channel. I shared the link earlier for Josh's channel, and I dropped West Coast Dogman's channel. Go by and show those folks some love. Give them a like, share, and subscribe, because we're all kind of in this together. We're all doing similar things, but in our own ways. Just great content at all of those channels, and it's a lot of fun where we delve into these subjects. And I thoroughly enjoy it. I missed the hell out of Naoma. She was a lot of fun on the channel.
Yeah, and it's really cool when we can do stuff like this, where we can actually talk and throw our ideas back and forth. And it's a really cool community that we're all a part of.
Right. And I love that feeling too.
Yeah.
And one thing about the cryptid world is there's so much bitterness and infighting among different researchers that believe one way or the other. We don't get into any of that crap here. We just enjoy talking about these stories. We share what we know, and we just enjoy doing it. I mean, like JT and Ryan, they get into not only all things creepy and cryptid, but they talk about horror films and everything else.
Yeah, we talk about a lot of those.
But you had that writer on the other day. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Alex Grass.
Yeah, he was awesome. I watched that.
Yeah,
super
cool guy.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious there at the beginning. You guys mentioned me, and he's like, yeah, well, I know that guy. I'm like, hey, that's cool.
He's a comedian.
He's fun. He was funny as heck.
Yeah, he was.
But folks, Naoma, JT, thank you for jumping in.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
I hope Anthony gets to feeling better. I'll shoot him a message here in a little bit and check on him. He just wasn't feeling well, so he had to kind of run.
It was nice meeting you.
It was nice meeting you too.
I
watched your show a few times.
Oh, cool. I hope
These
we
guys
didn't
are
offend
awesome.
you too bad.
I was just thinking I need to go.
We've
I'm
talked
the one
about
who usually has to apologize for that. But I need to go over and make sure that I subbed the last time I was there, because I don't know that I have. But I may already be subbed.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Folks,
appreciate it.
Big thank you to Josh from What Lurks Beneath. Josh Nanocchio, he said, remember it was like Pinocchio. Josh Nanocchio, super nice guy. He is going to be back. I'm going to be getting with him this week and plan the next time he can come on. It was a hoot and a half having him on, and hearing his kids in the background.
Yeah,
it cracked me up so much. Reminded me so much when my boys were little. Because you couldn't have an adult conversation without one of them like, Dad. So, I totally relate. I totally get it. Josh has some amazing content over there. Just a great storyteller. Check out Horror Chronicles. They've got some awesome content over there, bringing out some of the coolest writers I've seen, as well as talking to actors, directors, talking about horror films.
We've gotten really lucky.
All with kind of that horror, the heavy metal feel to it.
Yeah,
and it's a great vibe over at your channel. And Naoma tells some awesome stories. And definitely go over there and show some love to her channel. And one thing I want to say, and this is kind of for all of us, stories are journeys that we take together. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking this journey with us.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Without you, we haven't got a story to tell. Well, we
Exactly.
have the story, but we don't have anyone to tell it to.
Yeah, but who would listen?
The other people in my head.
And I will leave you with the parting thought of Sasquatch in a tux
My prom date, here I come.
and raccoon jazz hands.
Oh, yeah.
Jazz. So thank you guys for joining us.
Jazzy.
JT, I need to get with you and Ryan. We need to do like an Ozarks folklore show because there's so much of it we can do, and just do a whole show on it. Yeah. Naomi, you are welcome back anytime if you want. If you got a topic you want to do a show about, I'm happy to collaborate. And
it's called Hardy, Arkansas.
Yeah, we need to do the Hardy show. I want to go down there and film. It's really not that far. It's like maybe 2.5 hour drive for me. And
it's probably about a 4-hour drive for me.
I need to go back down to Hardy and film because that town it's weird. It's like when the sun goes down, the streets are dead. There's nobody out.
I want to go down so I can see the boys.
There you go.
The Hardy Boys.
The Hardy Boys. Oh.
But I'm here all week, folks.
Well, folks, we're going to head out and call it a night.
All
we
right.
are coming up on the 3-hour mark. JT, you want to close it out with the Horror Chronicles Fadeaway?
Hey, like we always say, keep it creepy.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.